Hello out there, netizens. Welcome to another massive debate review with your favorite host, Mark Reed, and joined by my even more favorite, work that out if you can, co-host, Better Than Ember. How you doing, Ember?
Hello there. I continue to exist in
I'm glad you
North
exist.
America.
I am so glad you exist. You existing has been a wonderful time for me. So I'm glad you exist purely for selfish reasons. But you know that
I'm
is
happy to help.
yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah. So today we're doing a part two. We did the part one over on Better Than Ember. Please do check out our channel if you haven't before. A lot of topical issues, a lot of informative stuff over there about the way the Americas are going and what is happening to certain populations within it, which I always find fascinating. I'm so glad I can join. I'm joined by Ember, and I'm so glad you could join us here as we delve into this part two. Now, part one, we got through the introductions, which were very long, if all things considered, like half the thing. I was not impressed. Dan Barker's was amazingly short, like incredibly short compared to good old Joe Boot, right? I don't know. Like, I've only ever seen once before them basically go, do you remember the debate that they basically said, yeah, take as much time for the introduction as you want? If you don't remember that one, that was the flat earth debate between the two Christians. That was
Oh, Dean Odell and Greg
yes.
Locke. Yeah.
Yes, and Odell went first, and he just rambled for ages. Like his introduction was insanely long, like just insanely long. I don't know if that sort of happened here. I doubt it. Look, there's no problem with giving up a introduction if you don't feel like you need to. I've seen it done plenty of times where people have just gone, my position is XYZ, let's get to the discussion. I've seen it happen before, right?
Sure.
Like they just state their position and then say, well, I want to address it in the thing. I think that it's not as impactful, but I guess what I'm advising is that if you only have a point to make, don't feel like you've got to pad it out to make this long-winded introduction. If you've got something to say, absolutely use your time. But if you don't have to. Like there is something good about saying, hey, that's it, I'm done. Say what you got to. Don't try to, because people will tell when you're just bloviating, like you're just saying crap. People will go, yeah, they've already said that twice already and kind of sick of it. Totally understand. Yeah, but if you've got points to make, definitely use it. I think that's good advice. But let's see. What am I doing? I am getting things up. Yep.
You're
okay.
hosting a debate review.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I need proof. I need proof of this. That's not the viewer one. This is the view. No, that's the view. Okay, good. The other thing that I did notice about part one, and definitely do check out part one if you do wanna see the first part, because it was actually pretty fascinating. Joe Boot, pre-sup, definitely pre-sup. If he's not a pre-sup, then he should sue himself for slander. Quite frankly, he really was, well, this is my worldview. Everyone's got a worldview. I know that God's a thing, and that's about it. Very pre-suppy.
The actual question that they're trying to resolve is there an afterlife? So you don't even need to talk about Christianity. He's going at it from the direction that if Christianity is true, as we've been told, then therefore there must be a heaven, yada yada. And he's just presupposing it.
Yes,
but like you don't actually have to fight over Christianity to discuss this topic.
Right. But it's more like it's not as we've been told. It's more like if Christianity is true, and it is because that's my worldview, right? Like that is a given. Then there must be an afterlife, and I fail to see how that will convince anybody except the most sort of diehard Christian that in fact his argument has merit. It's kind of wild. He's kind of preaching to the choir, but that is literally what they do in pre-sup. Unfortunately, regrettably, it is
Much
sort
of
of
Christianity, in fact.
well, not as much as pre-sup. Like when you get the people who are very, very into pre-sup, it will be like, you know, it's true and I know it's true. So it's true, right? Like it is this kind of projection of your own worldview onto the opposition. Like I would say there is no God, but I wouldn't say, oh, and you believe it as well. Like, I mean, come on, that's just, that's ridiculous, right? Like me sort of going to a Christian and saying, well, you're just pretending to believe.
I've wondered that a few times. I don't think I've ever accused anyone of that, but some apologists make me wonder, especially the very buy my DVDs flavored ones. If they really believed what they said, they wouldn't be pitching Christianity like it was a sham wow,
Yeah. I'm in two minds about that. I think that part of it is, has merit. I get what you're saying. And there's certain people, if you go into a debate saying, oh, well, God is just the voice in my head, I'm just completely crazy. I totally get why you would say, hey, you probably don't actually believe in a God. I totally get that. But it's impossible to tell. And I think that most Christians do actually believe in the God. I just don't think they've got very good reasons to. I think that they, but that doesn't mean I get to go, well, you don't actually believe in it. You're just believing in it, saying you do kind of thing. I've actually used that talking to someone before when they said, you're just, not believing in your own righteousness. And it's like, yeah, but where does that get us? Like I could just say, hey, you're just pretending to believe. And then where does that get us at the end of the day? Right? Like if you're saying, hey, I'm pretending not to believe, and I'm saying you're pretending to believe, where do we go from there? It's just both of us accusing.
We're all playing make believe because we're actually brains in jars.
Right. Like we're just basically get to the point of we're both just making assertions about the other person with no basis to base that on. It's absolutely crazy. Like I just don't understand why that they would do that. It's very strange. But I'll start off this puppy.
Puppies?
Just one. Puppies? These are not puppies. I'm lying. It's not puppies. It's Dan Barker and Joe Boot. Joe Boot. What a working class name. What a guy. What a guy.
I wonder if it's his original name. Like, is it a stage name that he picked because it sounds so working class? Maybe?
Why would you choose Joe Boot as a stage name? That's got to be his. That name sounds so English. I
have a new dream debate between Christians. Joe Boot and Kyle Butt. Boot versus Butt.
Well, it's actually Kyle Butts. Oh, Kyle Butt. Yeah. Kyle Butt. Boot versus Butt.
I'm easily amused.
Or Butt versus Boot, maybe. I mean, that sounds just as... Okay, moving right along.
We now enter the second part of the program, the rebuttal period. So I'll call upon each speaker to speak for 10 minutes in rebuttal. First,
shouldn't the light be red? Like I'm just going. Shouldn't it?
I think we're the warning. I think we're on one of those freeze frames where they lost the actual video or something.
Yeah, and the audio is not great either. The moderator
should be talking into his microphone. It would be helpful.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he's kind of, riding side carriage at the moment. It's not great. It's not great. Sir, your microphone is... Anyway, maybe they should have just got lapel mics and,
That could work too. But yeah, he's just explaining to the audience that we're moving into rebuttals, and I forget how much time they have, but they have a certain amount of time.
Yeah. That's what I said, Lindsay. That's what I said. Like Joe Dirt. That's what I said. Like, that's really what it brings up, right?
Reverend Joe.
Well, I've never had the pleasure of meeting Dan before. I have heard something of his story on the various YouTube interviews that have been done with him. I don't know what happened to him in his previous Christian life, but he does try and make a great deal of hay out of his so-called Christian past and his touring around the US in his camper van singing about the apocalypse.
Well, you could ask him. Well, he's basically trying to empathize with the audience or sort of find a common ground that he believed sincerely himself, right? Like, he's just sort of that's what he's saying. He used to be a pastor. He used to say this was absolutely true. And then he deconstructed and found out there wasn't a lot of it's not him making hay. I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. He's basically summing up that people can be wrong. Like, I could be wrong about being an atheist, right? If I found good, reliable, evidentiary-based reasons to believe there is a God, then I would change to being atheist. But I'm never presented with that evidence, unfortunately. Or fortunately. I don't know. Like, that just never comes up. Instead, I get these hypotheticals of, well, if you cut off my head and I came back to life, you would believe in a God. Quite possibly, sure. Are you going to do that? No? Okay, well.
Yeah, tell me. It's the AI images, right? Like, we're seeing, especially with politics, but we're seeing it a little bit with Christian apologists too. Other apologists, I'm sure, but the Christians show up in social media feeds around these parts a lot more often, where they have like these images of impossible things that never happen, and they're like, behold the power of Jesus. And I'm like, the fact you had to have a computer draw a cartoon shows me why I shouldn't believe you, because it never actually happens.
Right. I mean, the power of AI seems to outweigh the power of Jesus at the moment. He's not doing a lot about it, I have to say. So, you know, because Jesus won't step in to save people, right? Like, because of the whole free will thing. If someone's doing something wrong, then Jesus can't step in because he's got to allow free will, right? Does AI have the same limitation? Like, does Jesus not step in because you've got to preserve the free will of AI? Or is just Jesus sleeping on the whole AI problem and, you know, AI hallucinations and people I saw a thing recently, people being convinced that the AI, like, is their friend and stuff. They're apparently part of the AI bubble is the part of the problem is that the AI is telling business leaders how big AI is going to be. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're relying on AI to tell you that, like, that seems counterproductive. Anyway, but what I'm saying is, does the AI have free will and therefore a soul, and so they can't step in? Or could God step in to stop this dystopian AI nightmare that we seem to be facing at the moment? Because if computers have no free will, I don't see why they just can't clean up that problem, right?
Yeah.
And this is his own words. He went around the US singing about the apocalypse, and I have sympathy with the fact that some of the doctrines he says he was taught.
Okay, so this is kind of a straw man. this is kind of just it's also it's a genetic fallacy, right? Like, so a genetic fallacy comes where you're basically not challenging the information itself, you're challenging the origin of the information. Right, so somebody that is sort of saying, hey, you can't possibly know about the Bible or interpret it correctly because you're an atheist, right? That's a genetic fallacy. It's sort of saying, hey, the place where it's coming from isn't valid. Like, you might think this is a ad hominem, like he's sort of attacking him, but it's more of the genetic fallacy because he is basically basically saying the information can't be true because it came from this person.
Yep.
Or the argument is invalid.
Wrong, because if he got it right, he'd still be a Christian.
Right. Like, I mean, I would take a different tact with Dan Barker's personal story. You can say it's anecdotal. You can say that, hey, just because, you lost the faith as a pastor, but lots of people are atheists and become pastors, kind of thing. Like, it's irrelevant to the conversation. There's a lot of different tacks you could go on this one, and sort of going, oh, they were the wrong kind of Christian. It ain't it. It ain't it, mate. You're not him. It ain't it. Like, don't. That's silly. That's just a fallacy.
Did not help him. But what we've heard tonight, I'm afraid, is cereal box atheism. It's tabloid atheism. They're of the kind that we're very accustomed to hearing.
What does that mean?
What cereal box is your atheism on, Ember? Mine's on Fruit Loops. Okay, that's where mine is at. Not that I ever have Fruit Loops, but that's where my atheism comes from. Sure.
Fair enough. I don't know if I had to pick a cereal, I might go with like Frosted Mini Wheats. I do like Life, but I can't associate life with religion because life without religion is sort of the point.
It's a lot better as far as I've heard. I've never really had religion, so I wouldn't kind of know, but I see a lot of problems coming out. A lot of problems. But this is just sort of this is sophistry. This is just sophistry. It's just we can tell that he doesn't really have a rebuttal if this is how he starts out. Like, when you start to rebut, you should go for the most impactful point first, if you can. I mean, doing them in order is fine. Like, doing them in order is fine if you've got notes. But ideally, you want to hit them with your biggest salvo first, and sort of saying, "Oh, you were an atheist a pastor who went around preaching Armageddon." That is not it. Like, you're not actually addressing the arguments.
In a way, he's kind of comparing him to Jesus, because as I recall, Jesus did the same thing.
Well, that's true. That's true. Maybe Dan Barker, Second Return of Jesus. Is it possible? Maybe. Prove me wrong, Christians.
Now in the media and seeing in our newspapers and seeing in books that you pick up at the airport. Lots of people don't believe in life after death and are happy. Fine, that's just all autobiography. I didn't say that people who don't believe in life after death or don't believe in God don't enjoy some degree of happiness.
Left-handed Jedi with $5 are followers of the flying spaghetti monster pastors. No, I believe they are pirates. I believe they are.
The prophets are pirates.
The prophets are
pirates.
Or the
pirates are prophets. One of those.
It really doesn't matter. We're making this shit up as we go along, just like all the other religions out there. Pastors. Wow. You know what? I was thinking, right? I was thinking that there is like a problem with wearing, like we were talking about protesting, and because the Australian government has proposed using facial recognition in order to sort of monitor things, right? And okay, so here's the background. Basically, they've said, okay, we're going to have a CCTV system like in England, but we're going to have a facial recognition program that will blur out anybody except for the person whose warrant you're after, right? I've got hesitations that the government is going to use this, responsibly, because history, I've got my reservations about it. I think it's a very bad idea. But what if we created a religion where due to certain holy scripture, the stuff that I wrote last week, we have to wear those Guy Fawkes marks, like out of V for Vendetta,
Okay.
right? We usually you're not allowed to wear masks, but that's a religious exemption, right? So yeah, and I love that the Cult of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was using a religious exemption to get on their driver's license with a colander or sieve on their head, which is just hilarious and fantastic. Just showing just how ridiculously you can just make up stuff to get around laws because it's a religion. Yeah. And I think John Oliver pointed out the same thing, that usually you can't promise that whatever you're doing will cure cancer or provide people, millions of dollars or whatever. But if you just say, hey, it's a religion, and, I'm allowed to promise anything as part of that religion, it's absolutely nuts. I think it's a problem. But thank you, Jedi. I appreciate it. Pastors. Pasta, tell me the news.
And fun fact, in the United States, you only need 3 people to sign a charter to start a religion.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we're out of luck, Ember. We need a third person. Damn it.
I know.
Damn it.
It's so
spoiled
hard.
Again.
What Dan has declared tonight, though, and he's just actually completely proved my point by the very straightforward, clear declarations that he's made, is that this debate tonight is pointless. There is no point in me coming. And there is no point in you coming. Because you are flotsam.
I didn't remember him saying that.
Nor do I.
I don't remember him saying that. Maybe there's a reason why we haven't heard of Joe Boot. Like, what the hell, dude? He never said that. What?
I tried to look him up earlier because I was hoping there may have been a discussion at least between him and Kyle Butt, because that would just be so fucking funny.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
He's on like 7 different lists of the top 100 best apologists ever.
Really?
I'm tickled. We should contact Sean McDowell, because Sean McDowell keeps a list of the 100 most influential apologists, so he can survey them from time to time about various things and find out if Joe Boot is on his list.
Wow. Okay.
You are purely a physical, chemical, biochemical reaction. There are as many meanings in the universe, according to Dan, therefore, as there are brains. He's trying to argue that I'm asking sort of irrelevant questions. There's these 2 beliefs. No. I'm asking the foundational, epistemological, philosophical, tough groundwork that we have to take responsibility to ask, rather than reading the back of Richard Dawkins' book.
That wasn't funny. I don't know why the audience... But maybe. I mean, they did make sense in context, but yeah, that's like, but what if you can ask those questions, but what we don't do is assume the answers straight up, right? Like, this is the thing. We're going into it asking the questions. What is the epistemological foundations of, what is the meaning of life and things like that? You're assuming what it is and not even asking the question of, is what I believe true? Like, it's so wild. Like, okay, you've got this belief. What I see is different. That's what we're debating about. And you're basically saying, oh, he doesn't believe the same thing as me. I'm going to straw man him and just say it's nonsense for me to be here because he doesn't believe he thinks that everybody has their own meaning to life. And... like, this is an appeal to consequence. It's basically saying, well, I don't like it if everybody makes their own meaning in life. Okay. What reason do we have to believe that is untrue?
you can't have a cookie because I'm on a diet. It makes me mad when you have a cookie.
It's really wild that he's sort of just going, we've got to ask this question and come to this one conclusion. Okay, why? Like, but he's not addressing that. Maybe he will in future, but what the hell?
And the groundwork is to ask, how do we approach reality and interpret so-called evidence? I've just shown from atheists, from humanists, and religious skeptics like David Hume, that they themselves were skeptical not only about God, but about all metaphysical claims about reality, even the physical world.
Yeah, we should be skeptical of all metaphysical claims, yes. Yes, and we especially should be skeptical about claims, or any claims, metaphysical claims, that we want to be true. Because we all have bias, and if we want something to be true, people have a tendency to use confirmation bias. So yes, we should be skeptical about all metaphysical claims. I don't see a problem with that. Even the claim that there is no supernatural things. Like, yeah, I'm skeptic, but skepticism isn't just, well, you believe it no matter what, right? That isn't what skepticism is. It means you apportion your belief to the evidence provided.
Yeah, I mean, that's being skeptical of our own beliefs is the only way we can have any confidence that any of the things we believe are true. And as a certain floating British circle often says, skepticism is the first step towards truth.
Who said that?
It's a fella. His channel is called The Skeptic.
Oh, okay.
His actual name is John. He goes to some events, and occasionally he's on Truth Wanted or some of the ACA shows. But so you can see him in meat form from time to time. But on his channel, he's just a floating circle.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think that I'm skeptical.
Rainbow draft guy.
Right. And you know, pre-subs, you'll go, well, I'm skeptical of everything. And they'll be like, including skepticism? Yes. Yes. Yeah. But there's a lot of evidence to show that skepticism does actually work. Because, you know, if we just believe everything without evidence, well, there's a Nigerian prince that would love to talk to you, right? Like there's all kinds of things that you should not believe until you have evidence that they're true. And that's what skepticism is, right? It's basically saying, hey, you disbelieve something until you have evidence that it's true. Hell, I'm skeptical of everything. Like, you know, it could be that we're a brain in a vat, as you mentioned earlier, Ember, but there's a lot of evidence that we're not, and no evidence to suggest that we are. So, you know, I'm even skeptical of that, but we do have evidence to support it. And that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's good to be skeptical. Like, you have what they call extreme skepticism, where you can't convince somebody, like a flat earther, right? You can't convince them no matter how much evidence. But, you know, we're just simply talking about having reasonable evidence. And if you want to say, oh, well, we've got that for Jesus, great. What is it? And you know, how does it stack up against evidence for other religions? Because I hate to break it to you, but just sort of saying, hey, the book says that Jesus died and came back to life, it ain't it. It ain't where it's at, mate. It just ain't. Yeah.
And it doesn't do it for me either. There's a whole lot of books that say very similar things.
Yep.
Gets up and says, well, there's one thing we absolutely know, and that says no evidence for God.
Why is this man shouting?
Well, Hume is asking an even more fundamental question. How can you have evidence for anything in a universe without God? Dan seems to be skiffing.
What?
that is not what Hume is saying. That is not what Hume is saying at all. His problem of induction applies to God. Like, this is the thing. This guy does not understand Hume. What he's saying is that, hey, inductively, and I think I went through this last week, but basically Hume's thing is that when you look at an induction, now there's a few different types of the way that we use epistemology to figure out things. One's deduction, right? So one's deduction. Basically, it's like, okay, there's 3 people in the room. The other 2 weren't there. The last person must have done it, right? Like, so it's a whodunit. You eliminate one by one, like who actually could have done it, and you're left with one person. That's deduction. You're basically making a logical inference based upon what it's not, right? Like what couldn't have happened, the last one, that is what happened, right? That is basically how you use deduction. Induction is using patterns to say into the future what will happen in the future, or what happened based upon those repeated patterns. So if we find fingerprints on the knife, if we find that somebody's boot prints are there at the time of the murder, we don't have to deduce. We can say, well, when we find those things in the past, that's also true in the future. Now, the third one's abduction, and that one's a little bit...
Take what you want.
Well, it's more probabilities kind of thing. Just, what is the most probable explanation for this? And it's not really that useful as terms of finding out exactly what's true, but it's used a lot statistically. So, if we sort of say people are more likely to do this based upon statistical analysis, we're using abduction, right? Where,
Yeah, you can use it to narrow down possibilities for further investigation.
Oh, absolutely. But it's really not that useful as far as finding the actual event or finding, what is actually true. It will just tell you statistical probabilities, and that's fine. That's what it's for. And funnily enough, Sherlock Holmes is sort of the one with the, deduction, my dear Watson. He rarely ever used deduction in his books. He always used induction, which is kind of hilarious that, he sort of says, I use deduction when he's not, which is just hilarious. But the problem with induction that Hume pointed out was that it uses induction to say, well, when we find something in the past, we generally do find those patterns repeat. So, for instance, your fingerprints on the knife, right? So we're basically saying, okay, when we find fingerprints on the knife when someone's been murdered, the fingerprints belong to the murderer. But what you're relying on is for that to keep being true. And induction sort of says, well, those patterns will repeat, which is a pattern recognition thing, or repetition thing in and of itself. So in order for induction to work, patterns have to repeat, which is also an inductive thing, right? Those patterns repeating, induction is relying on induction. So it's kind of a philosophical, well, you're relying on induction to say that things will continue to happen. That's using induction to prove induction, right? But Karl Popper sort of came up with a way around it by having fallibility, which saying that for any given thing that we're following, including induction, that we can try to falsify it and believe it works right up until the point where it's falsified. Right, fallibility, actually falsifiability is what he sort of said. And that overcomes it by saying, hey, we kind of say that it works right up until the point that it doesn't. Right, if it fails to work, we say, hey, induction, that doesn't work anymore. But it does, so we keep believing it until it fails to work. Any inductive fact or any inductive argument, we can say, okay, well, we'll believe that works until it's shown not to. Right, so just say fingerprints can magically appear on knives, right? We can believe that that works until, somebody commits a crime, it's on camera and everything, and somebody else's fingerprints appears on the knife. We can go, okay, that doesn't work anymore. That inductively fails, right? So it's not a problem. We just need to assume that nothing's ever set in stone and keep testing it. So that's sort of a way around it. But what Hume wasn't saying, right, was that God is the escape hatch to this. Anybody that doesn't believe in God, induction doesn't work. That wasn't what Hume was saying, right? Because even if you think that the fingerprints on the knife are a sign of God's order, there's always the same problem. how do you know God will keep doing the same thing over and over? How do you get around that inductive argument? Because he could miracle fingerprints onto the knife.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so how can you ever rely on induction at all? So no, Christians don't get a free pass for this. They've got to explain why induction works, because God has no obligation to ever give the same result again and again. So it's not just a problem for atheists, it's a problem for everybody.
Yeah.
And that is true as well. Inductive current, yes. Yes. That is true as well.
We do love current induction as well as historical, yes.
Yeah. But we do use induction to say that keeps happening when we do, create a magnetic field and it causes a current and none connect. Yes, that is also induction. We say that just keeps happening. And we will say that it works right up until the point where we make a magnetic current and it doesn't work. And then we say, hey, that is wrong.
Right. Like the apologists never seem to count the negative miracles either. Like when a natural thing should happen and doesn't. Like if they truly believed that everything is manually controlled by God and we didn't have calculable, observable natural processes to just rely on, then why would they believe the fingerprints on any knife are actually from the killer and not God saying, I'm going to smite this fellow in particular?
Right. I don't, it doesn't get them around it. It's just presups basically go, yes, well, we presuppose that God anchors and secures all of this, and therefore we're not affected by the question. It's just assertion, right? It is just basically dogmatic assertion. He doesn't get a free pass on the problem of induction because he appeals to a God. In fact, it makes it that much worse. Because can anything ever be reliably induced or can a conclusion be reliably reached when there is always that possibility that a God magicked the circumstances differently? It makes it so much worse.
Skipping over in this crass scientism that is so wearisome to the flesh. 300 years of Western philosophy. I mean, are Sartre and Camus and are these people idiots? They're all atheists. If the universe is meaningless and there's no morality, well, why can't I just lie throughout the rest of this debate and miss?
He did not say that.
And those are not the same thing.
Yeah. Why can't I just lie through this debate? I think you can. You definitely can.
From a certain point of view, he is.
Yeah, because you're absolutely at least misrepresenting what Dan Barker said. So, I could just lie through this. Well, I don't see a God stopping you. There are consequences to that, though. As Trump is finding out, there are consequences to lying your ass off all the time. I don't... Like, this is wild. This is the worst straw manning I've ever seen. It is, oh, he says there's no morality. Dan Barker was very explicit that he said there's no, objective or absolute morality. He never said there was no morality. Wild.
Misrepresent everything Dan's got to say. If you're just a brain, just a biochemical reaction, you're all having a biochemical reaction now.
That's true.
So what is the basis for the validity of one biochemical reaction over the other? So let me put it to you this simply.
Well, they're both valid to themselves. Really, what we try and do... Okay, so you've got one biochemical reaction, is what you're saying, and yeah, for a tense, that is true. And you've got another biochemical reaction. They both disagree, okay? Really, what you'd hope to do is that they each have their own desires and wants, and you want to come together and find common ground so you can both, at some level, work towards that, because that's a lot better than trying to do it on your own. That's basically it. Wow.
I mean,
Who are Barker and Boot? Okay, so it's Dan Barker, who's sort of a famous atheist. Used to be a pastor. He's very, very good at debate. Fantastic guy. And Joe Boot is an apologist who I've never heard of before, and so far I'm really unimpressed.
It's pretty special. And I have no idea who the moderator is in this case, but the guy speaking right now, obviously Joe Boot. Dan Barker is one of the co-presidents of Recovering from Religion. He does Godless Gospel, a bunch of other stuff. You've probably heard of him here and there. But
wasn't he part of the Four Horsemen of the atheism?
I don't think so. There was Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, and
Dennett was the last one. Daniel Dennett.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're
I always forget the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
But yeah, he's got Boot here has something of a category error as well, because like being reductive like that and saying, oh, it's just chemical reactions. How are we to judge between? We're not saying one is valid and the other is invalid.
Right.
As chemical reactions, they're chemical reactions. Good job.
Right.
But one yields a more correct result. It's not even a right and wrong thing. Like one is less wrong than the other, you know?
Yeah, he's kind of trying to appeal to moral facts kind of things. And I think that Dan Barker wouldn't believe in moral facts. So we don't, like, he's sort of saying, hey, in any situation, one person, like, it's like math, right? Like 2 + 2 must equal 4 kind of thing. And that is a very reductionist idea of how morality works, even in religion, right? Like you will have religious people who will believe in the same God, go to the same church, and they'll disagree on things. It matters how we deal with these disagreements and how we achieve what we all want, rather than, you know, just say, hey, you're absolutely wrong, I'm absolutely right, and that's it. Like, this is sort of lowering morality into just a, you know, it's not useful. You know, how do we decide between these moral facts? Well, you know, I think those facts only exist. Like, for instance, if I want to have a happy, you know, nuclear family with 2.5 kids and, you know, a wife in gingham or whatever and a white picket fence, then I think that getting married as opposed to being a hermit would be the right thing to do. Okay, if I want that traditional nuclear family, right? Like, if I'm a hermit, that's probably not going to happen. So I can say, in virtue of what I do want to achieve through that, what is the best way to go about doing that? But we've got to look at these things also in the perspective of there are a whole bunch of other people with wants and desires as well, and they don't necessarily align with mine. So how do we build a society out of that? I don't think it's a case of, well, how do we figure out which is the moral fact? I think it's, how do we put together a functioning society that will benefit us all in getting to our goals? You know, because if we're alone, we won't be able to do it. If we have a non-functioning society, it will not get us to our goals as much. That's basically it. And then everything else comes flowing down from there. It becomes complicated. But, you know, it's a lot simpler to say, hey, God knows the moral facts and I'm doing it. It's a lot simpler, right? That doesn't make it true.
I'm a biochemical reaction right now. He's reduced the brain, the mind, he's compared it to digestion. Interestingly enough, Dan does have a division.
I mean, he did, but he was comparing analogous properties. Digestion is not any specific organ or any specific enzyme. It's a whole process.
Right.
Much like being conscious requires numerous processes. Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is digestion is a lot more complicated than what he's putting across. I mean, even when you consider there's gut bacteria, which are foreign to us, but we can't live without, right? That even we've discovered send signals to the brain to say, hey, I need sustenance. Like digestion is actually a lot more complicated than Joe Boot is putting out. He's reducing it to, oh, well, it's just your stomach doing something. It's incredibly complicated, sir. It's incredibly complicated. You know, the acids that are involved, the way that those nutrients are absorbed by the lower and, you know, the small and large intestine. You know, what are you talking about? It's not like it's this, you know, magically it just transforms into poop. Like, what are you talking about?
Why don't we have like magic digestion if we have a, you know, why has God effectively created a universe full of poop machines? Why can't we like touch an apple and just absorb its nutrients that way, you know?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. Is that what God does? Like he just sucks the life out of everything? I don't know. I
I
don't
think
know.
it has to be like burned, so because he likes the odors.
Oh,
I know
yeah,
aroma
yeah.
pleasing unto the Lord.
The aroma is pleasing.
Infinity concept, I talked about that. And if the universe is just matter in motion, just energy, just matter in motion, then all of us here, we're just matter in motion. We're just the swerve of atoms. Right now, there is a statistical possibility.
Well, I mean, matter and energy. I mean, you put out electrical signals. You know, I your neural networks are flood with electrical. Like it's not just matter. But yeah, you can strawman all you want. This is just a sort of, oh, all the physical stuff that we've discovered. There has to be something more. Why? Why? Like you don't have evidence for a soul or whatever. Like he's trying to say he's just, you know, it's a argument from incredulity. I'm incredulous that just, you know, all of the complex features of our mind and body and all of this stuff can possibly be reduced to physical systems. I don't believe it. Great. Why? Why?
And what's really funny about that is that he's saying physical systems are too simple. It doesn't explain things satisfactorily. But what he's proposing is actually a far less complex system. It's magic. God did it. You know,
Yeah.
with physical systems, it sounds simple, but they're so complex because they have to be. All the things that he's so impressed with, from digestion to cognition, are emergent properties of layers upon layers upon layers upon layers, plus billions of years of tinkering to get the neurons to fire just right. Getting neurons to fire in a way that was useful took evolution 100 million plus years.
No, I've got a feeling he doesn't believe in, you know, billions of years for life. I don't think he would believe in that, to be honest with you. But, you know, I want to push back on something you said, and that's a god's a lot more simple. It's not, right? Like, a god must be insanely complex in order to create the complexity of the universe kind of thing. Like, it's not that God isn't a complex thing. It's that you're basically saying it's too complex to understand, so I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
I don't know. And like any question to do with God, like why did God design it this way? Why did God do that? Why did God put the poop hole so close to the reproductive hole kind of thing? Like why I don't know. Don't know.
Could be worse.
Don't know.
We could have a cloaca.
That's true. You know, why is our breathing hole the same as our food hole and people die from trying to breathe food in? Why? They don't know, right? It's not that God is uncomplicated. It's just you basically are pointing at a unknown that is insanely complicated and saying we can never understand it, so I don't have to. It's worse than that, because I would say that if a God exists, it would be more complex than just physical systems. But we can understand physical systems, and these people say, well, we can't understand the God, so we don't have to. Well, that's a bit of a cop-out, isn't it?
Mysterious ways.
Mysterious ways.
Possibility that you are digesting a small atom from Pierre Trudeau in your stomach, right? You're drinking, you've eaten, he's been reconstituted into the ground, taken up by the water cycle. I'd love to pass Pierre Trudeau through my digestive system if I could. And maybe he is right now.
Say, but
Are they in Canada? Is that... Who's Pierre Trudeau?
Perhaps, or Wisconsin, or something like that. He could be Justin Trudeau's father. I know that Justin Trudeau's father was like a really well-known fellow in his time, but I missed that time, so I don't know. But that raises an interesting possibility about that ship of Theseus thing. You know, how every atom in your body gets replaced every 7 years or whatever it is that people say. And it's not quite true, but there's some truth to it. If by chance you happened to gradually, over the course of 7 years, collect all the atoms that once were Peter Trudeau, and they happen to occur in your body at the same time, in the same configuration, then by the ship of Theseus thing, would you become Peter Trudeau?
Well, I think that the chances, like, it's not really possible to reconstitute those atoms inside you in the same configuration as Pierre Trudeau, because, you know, once those atoms have lost their cohesion, and, you know, you get redistributed to the natural world, they don't come back together. Like that seems to be
not terribly well
one-way trip kind of thing. Look, it's not logically impossible, I grant you, but it may be physically impossible for you to reconstitute that person kind of thing. Absolutely.
Just based on DNA alone, for the same atoms to be in the same place, you'd need to have the same DNA in every cell in your body, and that's just not happening. But I mean, it's a fun way to think of. I love to take thought experiments and turn them around. Like, instead of the classic ship of Theseus, where you're replacing parts until when is it no longer the same ship? What if another ship added parts that once were parts of the ship of Theseus? At what point does it become the ship of Theseus?
Right. Yeah, no, I get you. There is that thing, and that's why sort of the Aristotelian, you know, laws of logic kind of thing, they kind of fail, because, you know, at what point, when you have the law of identity, at what point does that ship take on that identity if it's all the same parts? You know, at what point does the ship no longer be the ship of Theseus and be a different ship if all the parts are replaced? To me, as a nominalist, it sort of says, well, what we're saying is we're giving labels to things. We're saying this is the ship of Theseus, and it is sort of the abstract pattern that transcends, you know, our imagination, that says, hey, that's the ship if it has these parts in this configuration, this pattern, basically. And so it won't be the same ship physically, but because it is mentally the same ship, we will call it the same ship, but that's just a label. So the ship of Theseus is just a label for the pattern of parts that we are seeing, or of things that we are seeing. And, you know, we can apply that label even though all of the physical parts are different.
Well, if we want to get into Aristotelian ideology, then you get, you know, you've got your four causes for everything. And I guess a different way to look at identity is what makes it the ship of Theseus. Is it the specific configuration of specific parts, or is it the fact that it is a ship owned by the man Theseus, who is a real character in the Odyssey and the Iliad, by which I mean he was a real fictional whatever. Yeah. Maybe he was real, but he was in the stories anyway.
Yeah.
So if he owns the ship, it doesn't matter what the parts are. If you take the same parts and build them into a different ship, but someone else owns it, then it's not the ship of Theseus by that particular identification factor.
Well, no, that's not how it worked. That's not how it worked. The original patent was the ship of Theseus. Even if he passed it along to his son, even if he sold it, that was the ship of Theseus, right? It's just that patent is the one.
The ship of Theseus Jr.
Yeah. No, I got you. But sort of, I think there's something comforting in saying, hey, all of my atoms will return to the natural world, to the universe around me. Like a tree might use part of it to grow. I mean, they've got burials that you put somebody, and I love the idea of that you put somebody beneath a tree so you can nourish the tree as it grows. I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful. It's very expensive, apparently, which, you know, is horrendous, but I think there is something to that. Even when somebody is cremated, you know, it's not like their atoms dissolve, they go back into ash and things like that. Like it does, there is no end as far as your physical form is concerned. We're really just talking about you being redistributed to the same natural world that you were compiled from.
Mm-hmm. There's really no avoiding it unless you pull a Robert Jastrow and get your ashes interred on the moon or something. Your biomass goes back into the system.
Yeah. There is no way to actually end somebody's, physical property. And now there's a lot of, well, is that life after death? Well, no, not really. We wouldn't say that, that life modifier would be, ashes or whatever, or, soil or something. But if you're saying if they're life after death, like you will become a whatever it is that those elements are absorbed into, including a tree, well, maybe, yeah. But, I would say that from the distinction of this debate, that would not be you anymore. But that raises the question, what is you? Like you aren't just your physical body. You aren't just the product of your mind. Like what actually makes you you? And it's a good question, one that philosophers have kind of wrestled with and postulated for ages. Obviously, Joe Boot, he's got the idea of, well, you are your soul, something that's never been demonstrated. There's no reason to believe. Right. You have this spiritual essence. But I think when I'm thinking of what is me, it is an amalgamation of the pattern of my body and the pattern of my mind. Like all my experiences, all of the things that have been added up, combined with my physical structure. But Boot here is trying to say, well, it's just physical structure. There is nothing else. And it's like, no, you could clone the body. It still wouldn't be me, because that clone would not have gone through all the experience I have had. And as soon as you clone somebody, say you put the experiences in the past in them, they still don't have consciousness of what I'm doing at the moment. As soon as that split happens, they are two different people, because just instantly they will have two different perceptions of experience. They might be incredibly similar, but the mind just processes everything around us as we're working, as we're living. So as soon as you relocate that perception, you are starting to have two different people with two different experiences. They might be insanely similar.
There's some really cool books that explore that possibility. There's We Are Legion, which is a story of it's not exactly an artificial intelligence. It's basically a brain scan of a dead human that remembers being the dead human, but it is a computer system. And his name is Bob. We are Bob. We are Legion. We are Bob is the first one. There's several books, but he's a Van Neumann probe. So his job is to go to other solar systems and build more copies of himself.
Right.
And since he only has his own system to make copies of the system from, then he makes duplicates of himself. But as soon as the duplicates turn on, they all express slight and gradually increasing differences in personality. It's fascinating.
Yep.
Alternately, Orson Scott Card, who is a somewhat controversial author for a number of reasons, but famously wrote the Ender's Game book. That's actually part of a series. And book 4 of the series, which is supposedly the original ending of the Ender Saga, is on this one planet where the local species all have like a 2-stage life cycle. And the intelligent life that live there, the planet has been infected with this virus called descalada, which is a Portuguese slang word that means to come unstuck. And what it does is it's kind of untethered their reproduction from their own species. They need it's weird. They need to work with another unrelated species in order to reproduce. And it turns out that's a different stage in their own life cycle. Like, for example, there's plants that are also the cows that eat the plants. It's very strange. But that's how weird. The species have to reproduce because of this virus. And with the sentient species, when they die in their animal body, where they're able to run around and use tools and whatnot, they plant them. They real quick run through and cut them open and open their chest and whatnot, so that the brand new plant that's like spontaneously generated in their heart can grow. But what's weird about it is that the plant version of themselves is still conscious and still has their memories from their life, even though their experience is vastly different. Like, they don't understand animal emotions anymore. They can't process those feelings, but they remember having those feelings. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, that sounds like an L. Ron Hubbard book, to be honest with you. But, I think that I find comforting that, like, my physical form will go on to help other things flourish and grow. I think that's a lovely idea. I don't know why anybody would be sort of like hate it, or to go, oh well, that there's no meaning there anymore. Yeah, I've got meaning in my life. I make it. There's things that I desire due to who I am. I don't see a problem with that. You keep saying there's a greater meaning, but you can't demonstrate that it's actually true.
But life, there is, if you're just atoms, of course you have life after death. On Dan's concept, you have life after death, because your atoms are just reconstituted. They may take a slightly different form, and since Dan has not been reconstituted at this point, okay, he's not dead, in this present form, then he does not know there isn't consciousness beyond this present form. I mean, this talking of certitude.
He's not saying there is a consciousness beyond this present form. That's the thing. But you won't be sad about it or regret it or wish you were different, because you won't have a consciousness to do any of those things, and that's okay. That's okay. You won't be sad about it because you won't be anything about it. And I know that really upsets Christians to say, oh, there might be a time where you don't exist. But I think it was Matt Delahunty that said, I existed for like billions of years before I was born, and it didn't worry me then. So why would I be worried afterwards?
It didn't exist, but yeah.
Yeah, it didn't exist. Yeah, I didn't exist for billions of years before I was born, and it didn't worry me then. And that's a good reason why we should be valuing the lives that we have. But sort of going, oh, but I'm going to feel dreadful after I die. No, you won't. You won't feel at all. That's the whole point. But your constitute parts will go on, because those, we know that they, I mean, don't forget that religion at one point thought that they could weigh the body after death and find out that the soul had left. They honestly thought that. And
26 grams.
Right. And we redid those tests and did them empirically and scientifically, and no, nothing is leaving the body after you are dead. Like, you are decomposed, but we know where that material is going. Bacteria. And this is the thing. Somebody once said we're the masters of the world. And no, Like, without bacteria, nothing would rot and decay. They are so essential for the ecosystem that if they weren't around, we wouldn't be able to function. Like, nothing would decay at all. Can you imagine that? Like, anything dying would just sit there.
We've seen situations like that in the past. Not everything, but like some of the older petrified forests are because nothing could break down the wood. So they just sat there and permineralized.
Yeah, I mean, bacteria, a lot of them suck. A lot of them are really beneficial. Humans need bacteria in their gut to survive. Koalas need a certain bacteria in order to eat eucalyptus leaves. Like, they are integral. This whole idea that, like, humans are this thing estranged from the natural world, we don't need it anymore. Nobody who studies evolution thinks that. Nobody. Right? The natural ecosystem is so intrinsic to life forms, including us, that without it, we would not be able to survive. Like, we don't place ourselves, as this fantastically evolved thing that's separate from the rest of the natural world. That's not what we do.
About these things is a plain absurdity. How can we have a logical, rational argument if all we're talking about is, I was going to say this in the cross-examination, but we might as well just get a couple of cans of pop, Dan shakes one, I'll shake the other, whichever fizzes most wins the debate, because that's all your brain is. That's all your mind is. This is the tough philosophical work that we have to do.
I mean, that doesn't determine truth, but to some extent, the brain that's the most fizzy has an edge and is more likely to win a debate, so to speak.
Well, sure, but if by we mean it shakes, like the thing is that when you're shaking a bottle of pop, it's not making a comparison to anything in the world. So when I am communicating, like if you're going to say, hey, my brain is just bubbles and fizzes and stuff, yes, okay, that's fine. But when it comes out as communication, that fizzing somehow has to evaluate the world around me. And when I communicate it, it will either align or not align with the world around you. So as a fizzing pop yourself, that will evaluate the world around you. And if what I'm saying aligns with the world around me, then that fizzing is better than the fizzing that says there is a 20-foot bird in the corner, right? Like, this isn't just it fizzes. This is, does the fizzing align with what the other fizzing is showing you? Because if I say, hey, my brain fizzes and says, hey, there's a big yellow bird in the corner called Big Bird, we've got a problem there. That does not seem to align with reality. And the people in the debate will look over there and go, this guy's out of his mind. Your fizzing is not working correctly, sir. So we can evaluate that fizzing, and that's what the audience is doing. But I don't get how a bottle of pop, because that in no way is analyzing the world around it, for better or for ill. It's reductionist. A bottle of pop has no sensory perception. This is a false analogy, because you have to acknowledge that fizzing isn't in isolation. It will react to the world around it.
When we ask about the fundamental question of God and life after death, Dan's just sidestepping the challenge. How does Dan's worldview, his belief system, not collapse into total absurdity? What he said tonight doesn't amount to a hill of beans. He's trotted out 50 things about the Bible. I can't answer those in 10 minutes. And
Oh, he's sidestepping the question. He's sidestepping the question. He's brought out all this stuff about the Bible, but I can't answer that. I'm not sidestepping. He is. My guy. What?
It's about the afterlife.
What? I don't, this is a sort of appeal to consequence. It's just basically saying, I don't like the entailments of a physical only universe. I want there to be something more. Great. Is that a good reason to believe it? Does that make sense? Right. I think Geronimus and asked something earlier, which was like, Geronimus sort of said, and I did notice it, Geronimus, so thank you. The objective morality boils down to, I don't like the consequence of the argument, so I can disagree. Can you think of any argument where an unpalatable result bears on the truth of the claim? No, I can't think of any where me disliking the outcome or the entailments of that thing makes it true or untrue. That's what we've got to look at. Like, is it just, well, you don't like the idea of there not being a soul? Well, in that case, you've got no argument, because whether or not you like it, I could absolutely wish that a soul exists and, that a God could just lay down an objective morality. I think that would be amazing and awesome and just fantastic. That isn't a reason to think it's true. I've got to have some other process of finding out whether something is true. And, like I've said before, I think it is the things that you want to be true that you should be most skeptical about, because we know that people will have a tendency to believe in things that they want to be true. And that gives them all kinds of problems, right? We have people that think, they believe in the gambler's fallacy. Oh, I've been losing, I've got to win soon. Right? Is that true? No, it's not. Probability doesn't work that way. Right? Like, you just because you've been losing doesn't mean you have to win in the future. And in fact, the way that casinos are set up, it probably makes it more unlikely that you will win big in the future. But they will go, well, I want to win, and they will let that color their rational thinking. This is a problem, because we know how statistics work, and just because you've lost doesn't mean you're going to win next time. You still have the same odds in that one game.
As the gamblers like to say, the dice don't actually remember. They don't know what they rolled before.
Right. And we can give statistical probabilities over a population, but that doesn't mean you're going to win. It just doesn't. But there's people that will believe it, and people that will, shake the dice or blow on it because that gives them luck, kind of thing. Really poor thinking. The dice don't care if you blow on them.
Of lectures to deal with those things. You can read my books. There's a few of them for sale, right? You can pick up books on Christian apologetics. What he said is just a bunch of assertions. He's articulated a worldview, though.
Wow. He's given a bunch of assertions, says the guy just asserting that a God and a soul exists. Mm-hmm. So this isn't actually addressing his arguments. This isn't really doing a counter to his arguments. What he's basically just getting across is that, you shouldn't like what he's saying. What he's saying is unappealing to you. He's saying that we're just a brain in a vat. Or a fizzy pop in a bottle, or whatever his analogy is that's really poor.
I do like to fizzy.
Well, it isn't just that our brains are fizzing chemicals. That's only very, very small amount of it. The sensory perception comes into it a lot. Like a lot. Hell, even this is the whole point. Other bacteria in your gut can send signals to your brain. Like, it's like looking at a incredibly complicated Mars rover and saying, oh, it's just a few electrical signals in wires. What? Then how is it exploring Mars, my guy? Like, what are you talking about? I really think that he's just dismissing rather than addressing those critiques. Because here's the thing. what Dan has said, we all agree on, right? We all agree that we have a organic body. We all agree that we have a brain that works on chemicals and electrical signals. You're the one claiming there is something more than that. You need to show it, sir. So do you see the burden of proof flip here? Right? He's basically saying, well, you say that we're just this thing. You've got to prove that we're more. How do you prove something that doesn't exist? Or prove that we're not more? Sorry. How do you prove something doesn't exist? You could show an absence of it.
You can show a contrary. Like, for example, I used to get into trouble with my teachers so often in school because they would say platitudes like, you can't prove a negative. And I'm like, well, how do we prove the earth isn't flat? And
yeah,
show that it's a globe. So we show a contrary demonstrates it also isn't flat or a rectangle or whatever else. And also, when people say you can't prove a negative, that's a negative statement. So how could they prove it?
Yeah. But something completely, and this is where we go back to Popper, where we're talking about unfalsifiable things, right? Don't forget the falsifiability is how we address Hume's problem of induction. Unfalsifiability is us not being able to show that it's incorrect. So when he appeals to a God that is unfalsifiable, not only do we say, well, there's no reason to believe it because it's unfalsifiable, it's not even worth considering it as an explanation, right? Like being true or false, because there's no possible way we can investigate it.
Yeah, that's Feynman used to say, it's not even wrong.
Yeah, it's not even wrong. There's just no point in investigating at all. It's like Russell's teapot. Bertrand Russell famously said, well, show me there's no teapot in orbit around Jupiter. Right? Where our instruments can't possibly tell if there's something that small in orbit around Jupiter. Right? Should that mean you should believe it until we can falsify it? No. No, it's not really even up for debate. We just say, well, that's just a claim. That's the problem. He is having one unfalsifiable claim and saying, oh, well, we should believe this because I don't like the entailments of the opposite. Whereas what Barker is saying is he's saying, well, we both agree that this physical form exists. You're claiming something extra. Before you should believe that, you should show that it actually exists. That's it. And he's trying to reverse the burden of proof and say, oh, show that the God doesn't exist. How can you do that with something unfalsifiable? What falsifiable criteria would you accept? The absence? You won't accept that. You'll just say God works in mysterious ways. He's divinely hidden. He's in some way, unable to be understood, ineffable, if you will. He appeals to the mystery in order so he doesn't have to show the actuality, which is kind of really crap.
Very, very much so. I do wonder if a similar solution to the flat earth problem could work here. Like if someone could show there is some mutually exclusive alternative, and that is the situation that that obtains. Like, for example, if there's another God that gets demonstrated that because that God is real, it's impossible for his God to, I don't know, something like that maybe.
Well, don't forget that Joe's already appealed to the impossibility of the contrary during this debate. I remember that in the one over on your channel, Ember. The impossibility of the contrary, as I said, is a circular argument when it comes from precepts. They're basically saying that because God did all of these things, it's impossible that it happened naturally. And it's impossible that it happened naturally because God did all of these things. It's just a circular argument. So he sort of said, well, it's impossible to be natural. He hasn't shown that either. But yeah, it is precept stuff. I just find his current sort of rebuttal is really just sophistry. It's really just, saying these catchphrases and saying, really shoddy arguments like, oh, you think we're just a fizzy soda bottle. Well, no, it's a lot more complicated than that. A fizzy soda bottle doesn't have senses to experience the world around us. As far as I know, you could show me wrong, but, there's a big difference there.
He said, everything is material, there's no meaning, there's no objective morality, your brain is just gas and air, and anything else is stupid. Anything else is...
I don't remember him saying any of that. Your brain is just gas and air. What?
Does this man think that the point of a rebuttal is to just recast what the other guy just said and everyone knows you're misspeaking about? Like,
well,
I don't think
I mean,
convince anyone.
Well, you would think so, but a lot of these guys, these really, really bad apologists, they will sort of dog whistle for their audience. These are things that they've heard from their pastor in the past, right? So when someone has been conditioned into a straw man of an atheist, for instance, and their pastor keeps getting up and saying, oh, they just think you're your brain is gas and air, and so you're too stupid to understand. They think they're so much better, and they think that there is no a lot of the time that will just be a dog whistle that you can bring up the same emotion in, that pastor has drilled into them by repeating the same things. Okay, if you're being critical, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you have been taught again and again, like how many times is it that you hear, oh, you think the universe came from nothing? This isn't something that makes any sense when you're talking about it in a debate and you explain what nothing means in the context of cosmogony. But, they just dog whistle. They just say, oh, do you think the universe came from nothing? And then you say, well, no, we're not using nothing as in literally no thing. It could have been a quantum vacuum. And they say, yeah, I know that. And it's like, well, then why'd you say it? Like, why'd you say it in the way that you did? Because they're just dog whistling to their audience.
You think your mother was a strawberry.
Exactly, yes. Yep. You think you're related to a... What does he say? Related to a banana or something?
That party changes up from time to time.
Yeah.
It's just stupid, so everybody believes anything. And yet, what is the basis if there's no truth that transcends your mind and mine? On what basis do you judge who is right tonight?
Well, we basically evaluate it rationally in context of what we believe reality to be and who is making the more rational claim. So I don't know why he would think that even a physicalist or a materialist, right? Like somebody that thinks there is only material things and there is nothing supernatural, right? Like, so somebody that thinks no supernatural things exist. I would say that I'm a provisional materialist, right? I think there's only material things until such time as I am shown something that isn't, something that is supernatural. That's fine, right? I'm happy to be changed, but I've never seen this thing that you claim to be out there. Show it to me, I will change my mind.
Have you considered the immortal words of the divine prophet Madonna? We are living in a material world, and I am a material girl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I've lost my train of thought off of that one, but that's okay.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. No, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, Madonna probably has better things to say about the situation that I do. But yeah, I mean, even a materialist can sort of say, hey, there's more to a person than just, we are greater than the sum of our parts, which is true of a lot of different things, right? A lot of different things are greater than the parts that just constitute them. It's not something that, because we've got this amazing ability to use our bodies and our minds, it destroys materialism or physicalism. No, that's not the case. There's all kinds of things that's greater than the sum of its parts. That's how we make circuits, right? Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. But even a materialist that thinks there's only material things, they can still say, hey, the world works in the universe, reality works in a certain way, and the person who is aligned with the systematic process of that reality is the one that is more correct, right? So you can sit there and say, hey, the theory of relativity and Newton's laws of gravity, they're both based upon both men looking at the material world around them and coming up with a model to explain how it works. One of them is more accurate to the reality, and that was Einstein. So yes, he was more correct. How do we do that for morality? I'm not sure, because I don't think moral facts exist. I don't think there is an objective moral standard out there to be close to. But I do think that people can be wrong in virtue of what they're trying to accomplish. Like, for instance, if they want to have that, nuclear family with a trad wife and, a marriage and the picket fence and all of that stuff, I do know that the person who is going out trying to find somebody who shares that sentiment is more right than somebody going to be a hermit, if that's what they want to accomplish. But that's only in virtue of what they want to accomplish, right? If somebody wants to be left alone, then the guy who's being a hermit is right.
Yeah, it's all about priorities and goals and how you subjectively sort things out. To what Joe was saying, we're kind of circling back to proximity to that. Is there no truth? No. Well, what is truth? Truth is that which comports with reality. It's not reality itself. It's thoughts, ideas, statements, etc. that match reality, or at least close enough match it that you could be said to be true. So you need the statements, the thoughts, the expressions, and without people, those don't exist. There is no truth. There's only the reality part.
Right. And that's sort of where ontology, or the actuality of things, makes a solid demarcation from epistemology, how we know what that reality is. I have some issues with reality is that which comports, truth is that which comports to reality. I think that truth is highly contextual. I think when you're talking about truth apt statements towards reality, I think that's absolutely brilliant definition. But I think truth is sort of a proposition that contextually aligns with something else. I don't think it has to be about reality. Because I can say that Superman comes from Krypton, and that is true, even though both Superman and Krypton do not exist.
Well, I guess you could rephrase that, if you want to get into the philosophy of it, to say it is that which comports with the objective frame of reference being referred to.
Yeah, but it's not as pithy. Yeah, I get that, but I think that, I think that when they say, "Oh, is truth objective or subjective?" Right? Because truth being, like, we know that Superman coming from Krypton is subjective, right? We know that that could be Mars or Alderaan, for all that's completely subjective. I think that truth is objective when it's talking about objective things, and it's subjective when talking about subjective things, right? Like, I think it's different depending on what you're talking about. So if you're talking about reality, you're obviously talking about something objective. Reality is going to be relative no matter what your stance on it. So I think that truth, when applied to reality, is going to be objective. but it doesn't necessarily mean, like I can say, hey, it is true that I think that ice cream is the nicest. Well, that's entirely subjective, right? But it is also true. You know, it can be true and still be subjective. It's just I'm talking about subjective things. That's why it's contextual. And that doesn't mean subjective, and that doesn't mean relative. It's contextual. But, you know, as far as I get that that's Matt Delahunty saying truth is that which comports with reality. I get what he's saying, understand it, and totally agree. He's talking about truth when applied to reality itself, right? Like just real things around us. I totally get that. So I don't have an objection to it. I just think that, you know, it doesn't work as a definition.
Whose chemical accident is correct? There isn't one. And therefore there isn't a... So the
one can be correct with moral distinction, like you can distinguish who is correct morally in virtue of what you're looking for, goal related. So if I want to be healthy, then I am wrong to say I should smoke to get healthy. Right? That is objectively wrong, but only in virtue of my goal. Okay, that is it. You know, but somebody is clearly wrong there. The doctor is saying, hey, quit smoking, it's bad for your health. And I'm saying, hey, it's good for my health. Someone is objectively wrong there. But again, he's sort of saying, hey, you know, what makes it your goal to get healthy?
Christian theistic assumptions are required to make sense of this debate. And that's the point that I'm making. You cannot have an intelligible... He said the universe is irrational. There's no meaning. That's what I was asserting. We agree there. We absolutely agree on that. Without God, there's absolutely no meaning. So you are confronted with a horde of irrationals.
No, he didn't say that. He's saying the universe itself has no meaning. The whole of the universe. We're a part of the universe and we can have different meaning. Like, that's not what he's saying.
This is also kicking the can down the road kind of thing, like the first cause issue, all the things. It's the same thing with purpose. What is the purpose of the universe with a God? To serve the God, to bring glory to the God, to please the God, whatever. Cool. What's the purpose of the God? Why is there a God? You know, what function does it serve?
Right. Well, they don't know. That's where I sort of say they keep appealing to mystery. You don't know and can't know. God has his own agenda and it's not up to you to know what it is. So that's where they sort of go, okay, we're not going to answer that question. Well, how do we know that God doesn't have any purpose? What possible purpose could an omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent God have?
What does he lack that he requires a universe for?
I don't know. It's very strange.
Mm-hmm.
The existentialist pointed out, and your brain gas has to interpret them for the first time. And all of you have the right...
You know, it's just so wild that he's gone from chemicals, you know, and it's not just chemicals in your brain. It is sort of, you know, neural pathways are more than just chemicals. They are matter interacting with chemicals, interacting with electrical signals. You know, like it's a lot more complicated than just chemicals. I mean, technically everything is just chemicals. You know, like water is just chemicals. Rocks are just chemicals. Like technically, if you do go back to the periodic chart, we're not finding anything that's not chemicals. So yes, technically he's right. So far, yes, but
neutrinos, I suppose, but that's splitting more than splitting hairs and such. I don't know. It's
and you could, but even if that was the case, and you're using chemicals for any matter whatsoever, your brain is matter, that's chemicals. Even if that is so, it still uses electromagnetic radiation in order to perform its functionality. There is still electrical charges going back and forth across neurons. Like, you can't just reduce it to matter.
The fact we're homeostatic is because we're, metabolic processes. That's chemical energy. It's chemicals, but it's the chemical reactions are exothermic reactions. They produce heat, and we make use of that. There's a lot of things that aren't just the matter. It's the interactions of the matter.
Sure. But looking at the brain, just saying, hey, it's just chemicals, well, it's not, because those electrical impulses, electricity is electromagnetic radiation. It's not matter. Like, what element is, if it's a chemical, what element is that electrical impulse? Well, it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of wild. It's electrons.
What chemical is a photon?
Yeah.
What chemical is a radio wave?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. But also the brain gas. It's giving me Matt Powell, the air and space different.
Like, seriously, like brain gas? What part of gas? Gas. Like, so he's gone from solids to gas now, which is just ridiculous. Like, do you understand what thoughts are? Do you what?
The absolute right to give your own interpretation of reality. That's why truth has collapsed in our age. You see, Dan wants to believe and kid himself into believing that most people today aren't interested in the supernatural or
like, I don't think that's why truth has collapsed today. Like, I don't think that's why. I think truth has collapsed because a lot of our corporations that were charged with presenting the truth are being run by a select part of the population who do not have they do not want to present the truth as they're charged to do. They want to make money. And I think that's a problem in the system. That's why truth has collapsed. That's a sort of a nonsensical thing. I think that media barons like Rupert Murdoch are the reason why it's hard to get truth out of media. But, I think that it hasn't collapsed because, people just believe that our thoughts are just, what the hell? You can point to social media and the prevalence of conspiracy theory and things like that. Sure. Like, I get you. But the truth hasn't collapsed. This is wild to me.
I don't believe in spirits or souls or whatever, and yet our culture is absolutely obsessed today with occultism. I bet many of you have been involved in playing with Ouija boards, table raising, levitation. Our entertainment industry is saturated with the occult. Do you know why?
Is this a satanic panic thing?
It kind of sounds that way. I'm like, bestie, I don't know if you know what obsessed means. Like, a curiosity is not the same thing as an obsession.
It's obsessed with the occult. Look, it's obsessed with science fiction as well. That doesn't mean that it's real and out there. Like, seriously, what the hell? This is so wild because even people that do that stuff, a lot of them don't even believe it's real. And in fact, like Ouija boards, for instance, wasn't supposed to be a cult in the first place. It was supposed to be a subconscious reading. It's supposed to be contacting your subconscious, not a demon or something. I'm not sure how we can sort of say that we're obsessed with the occult, though. What? I'm wondering what he means by that. Does he mean like there's a lot of occult movies and things like that? Because if that's the case,
there's a lot of God movies too. So
yeah, but nobody thinks they're real. That's the thing. Like, if you're watching Supernatural, like, you're not thinking, oh, this is a documentary. Like, what are you talking about? Wow, I don't know what he's talking about.
Because we don't believe this bull anymore. That we are just made up of material bits and pieces. And if we are, then we're all God. That's the God concept of atheism. We're all scattered throughout the universe, and we always will be. So there is life after death. Either way, I win the debate.
What?
What?
My guy, life after death means, like, if you're saying, hey, when your atoms break down, you're not alive anymore. What are you talking about? You nutter. Wow, okay, this is wild. Why is it that people believing that we are merely physical and we have a complex mind based upon the physical interactions of our brain, why would that automatically be that we're gods? I've never gotten that line of logic. It's kind of like, well, you have to believe in some God. Well, no. And if you're not believing in our God, you think yourself a gods. No. What?
You must have the authority of a god to reject the idea of a god. That's like saying, I don't believe you're a magician, is claiming I am a magician. You know,
Right.
that doesn't follow at all.
Right. Like if somebody's doing a magic trick and you go, like, I don't believe you can do real magic. I don't believe you're an actual magician. You just use magic tricks. And them going, well, you know, if you don't believe I'm an actual sorcerer, then you're making yourself the actual sorcerer. No, I'm not. I can't even do magic tricks. I can't even fool people that I'm a real magician. Like, seriously, what the hell is this argument? I do not think I'm a god. There is no possible definition where I fall within godhood. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Well, I can think of a set of criteria. For example, God cannot lift my phone, and yet we mortals can. So
you're not a god.
I can lift things that gods can't. We can actualize things in the world. You know, we can build artificial mountains. I'm in an artificial cave. We can build artificial eyeballs like this one right here. We can do a whole bunch. We can even create life under very specific conditions.
Yeah, that sort of falls under my ideas of a mundane god. You know, like if God is you know, sort of these mundane things. Like people say God is love and things like that. And I don't mean love is mundane. I just mean that it, you know, if God is the one doing that, then God is just an everyday, you know, banal thing. It's like the idea of saying, well, whatever caused the universe, we call that God. It's like, okay, then God is completely mundane. It's just a natural process. If that is what formed the universe, then that's what God is. You're kind of just undermining God.
Yeah,
right? So
it's like saying there's a sunrise. We call that aurora. That's the goddess Aurora. That's why sunrises happen. The fact sunrises happen proves the goddess Aurora. Cool, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, if that's what God is, then, you know, it's like the sun worship that Carlin said, you know, like you may as well worship the sun because at least you can see the sun. And if you're saying God is the sun, then you are just reducing God to something completely non-divine, right? Something absolutely banal and that's not divine in the slightest. You're just giving a label to a perfectly natural phenomenon and saying, well, that's God. You know, it's like when I ran into those guys saying, well, what if multi-dimensional aliens created the universe? And they said, well, then that's God. Then God's just a hyper-intelligent interdimensional alien. Why would we worship that?
I mean, if it like does cool tricks for us, like turning water into wine, then well, I don't know if I'd worship it just for like water turning into wine. It'd have to do like some shit that's worthy of worship, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Although, you know, the sun does things worthy of at least being worshipped more than the actual God.
That's true, but the sun doesn't seem to care if we worship it or not.
Yeah, and like Carlin says, it gives you the occasional melanoma, but, you know.
Yeah, the sun is a deadly laser.
That is true. That is true. But it does provide all the energy for or almost all the energy for our planet. There is some that comes from geothermal, but almost all the energy for our planet comes from the sun. It's more godlike than, you know, Yahweh ever did. So But, you know, at the end of the day, we know that the sun is just a reaction of nuclear fusion with, you know, hydrogen being converted to helium. It's just a plasma. Were you there for the debate where that flat earther said, "How does the sun burn? There's no air in space"? Because that was hilarious. That was so cute.
I've seen a few things along those lines.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a goddess in chat. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you're the goddess. I'm so sorry, Maya. Yeah. I don't worship you though. Just saying. Just saying. You have weasels for that kind of thing. All right. That's not me.
It's true. They're in charge of a whole cult.
Yeah. Weasel cult.
What is your evidence for other minds, Dan, for example? You say that there is no evidence for immaterial things. If you have a big idea tonight, does your brain get heavier? Does everything has weight, extension?
Loudly not understanding how things work.
Yeah. Yeah, a big idea is just a metaphor. We don't think the idea is literally big in your head. It's just very significant in the real world. Like, do you not understand how words work? I don't.
Is it a problem of maybe this is like a whole the theist subcategory is we've run across it before. People who truly do not comprehend a distinction between the abstract and the concrete. If you say big idea, it must be physically big.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like you're basically it's just sort of a contextual error when you're saying that, you know, I have a big thought, or, you know, I have this big idea. It's just significant. It's not physically big. Like, when that's not what we're saying. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. I don't understand why you wouldn't get that as a functioning human being. So how does he think when someone says they have a big idea? Your soul gets bigger in some way? Is that
maybe
like you're inflating your soul? I don't know. I'm wondering how it differs in his reality, that when someone says they have a big idea, they're not, you know, they're actually saying that something somewhere is getting bigger. I think that the more you think, the more electrical activity there is in your brain. And yes, there is evidence of this. We can MRI your brain and see the signals going on. Like when someone has a heightened emotional state, we can see them, you know, more of their brain activate, and different parts of their brain activate. So it isn't just, oh, well, we think it's material and we have no evidence whatsoever for this. We can actually track those changes in the freaking brain physically. So can you track the changes in the soul? How do you do that? I really hope that Dan Barker comes back and absolutely shatters him, to be honest with you. This is absolutely ridiculously bad. This is bad.
In space? This is nonsense. Laws of thought, if there are laws of thought, and if there's going to be a debate, there have to be. They don't weigh anything. They don't have any extension in space. If you say, I've got a great idea, and you start really thinking on it, does your head start getting heavier? Oh, it's a big idea. Everything.
Yeah, no, it's called an abstraction, my guy. Do you not understand abstractions? That they are part of an imagination?
I don't think he does, but he's kind of telling on himself with his argument style. He's like, this doesn't make any sense. That's because you're not understanding, not because Dan is an idiot.
Right.
Holy shit.
Right. Like we have, you know, if we have a thought that's big, right? One that makes our brain be very, very active, we can see that. Like if I'm sitting there meditating, certain brainwave patterns we can measure in an MRI, my brain will not be as active as if I've just got a sudden idea and I'm thinking about all the concepts of it. My brain will be very active, right? Electrical signals passing through neurons. This isn't surprising to anybody, but you're making it sound like those electrical signals and the memory stored should have weight for some reason, rather than activity, right? Yeah, Sapphire, that's an excellent, yeah, absolutely. Does he think when I download a picture on my computer, it gets heavier? Yes. That's the thing. Like but if you're downloading a picture on your computer, guess what you'll be able to track, right? Using Wireshark or something, right? A TCP/IP an analysis program. You'll be able to see activity. It's the same thing, right? Like it's just, yeah. You won't be able to. It won't have any physical weight, but the activity will increase because you are getting information or processing information. So yeah, the activity will increase. It's wild, right?
Isn't material.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, wear them out really fast, John. I got you, mate. I got you.
Just because, as well, it's possible for. Dan has said that people have accidents and the brain, when the brain's affected, that's the end of consciousness. And nobody's denying. The Christian worldview does not deny.
2 minutes.
Does not deny that the human person is a unity. Okay, that there is that I'm a corporeal, physical being, and that there is also an immaterial, incorporeal.
Yeah, well, we agree on the corporal, physical thing, material part. Now, are you going to show the extra part you claim that exists? Because if Dan's saying, hey, I think there's a physical, material, corporeal being, and you say, I agree, but you're saying there's something extra. It's up to you to show that something extra, not just claim it. That's the thing. The things that you're claiming that Dan is saying, you agree with.
Or you could just show us the God. That
Sure.
still wouldn't prove an afterlife, but it'd be a good start.
Well, he could show us the afterlife, maybe. Maybe get somebody who's been to this afterlife. Oh, wait, nobody has been to the afterlife and ever come back. So no, that's out of the question. Yeah. So why should we believe it? But he's not actually really addressing Dan's objections. He's just doing straw men and dog whistling. Because brain gas is just straw man. Like, nobody thinks that the brain produces gas and that's what thoughts are. Nobody thinks that.
Maybe for Joe they are.
Well, it's kind of a simplification. He's just really simplifying things to the point of being absurd. And that's what, he's trying to do. He's trying to make it sound absurd. But, no neurologist is going to tell you that the brain is simply this. Right? Nobody would use that simply in there at all because it's insanely complicated. And it doesn't just involve your brain. It also involves your entire nervous system. There are decisions that your body will make that doesn't even go through your brain. If you get burnt by an oven or something burns you and you pull your hand away, right? The decision is actually made in the spinal column. It's made in your lower back. They have measured that and traced that to where the signal comes from. Now, you can override it and touch something hot because you can override that. But if you're unknowingly burnt, you will automatically pull your hand away and the signal comes not from your brain, it comes from your spinal column. which is wild. So it means that the brain is getting all of this information in and it's processing it, but some decisions are made without any consultation of the brain whatsoever. None whatsoever. And our emotional responses can be like that, right? So if there's something more, he needs to show it. But he agrees that, hey, there's a corporeal body, there's a mind, there's a all of these things. Now show it. Show the soul.
Corporeal aspect to my being. Most of us basically intuit this reality. We don't really need a debate on the subject. We intuit the fact that there is an incorporeal, immaterial aspect to our being. Now,
is intuition a good way to decide on what reality is? I'm really sorry. Intuition is really fast and it's very efficient, but it's often wrong. Like there are counterintuitive things. Intuition is not a good way to evaluate your reality. Any type 1 thinking is not. So type 1 is your sort of gut feeling. It's very emotional. It's very quick because, if you see a darkened alley and something move, that fear response kicked in and you think it's somebody that might be lurking in there. That's intuition. Is it actually someone's lurking in there? Well, what's the best way to find that out? Is just go with your intuition? No, it's to actually investigate the damn thing. Like, intuition is very useful. It's very useful because it is fast and it has a tendency to just keep you out of trouble and go towards the path that is the best for you, sort of, in a moment's notice. However, it is not the most reliable. So I don't know why he would be referring to intuition as a good way to determine truth.
if I've got a computer, it's got hardware and software. If the hardware breaks, the computer doesn't function properly. Totally granted.
Yes.
Somebody has a car accident. Somebody has a disease that affects the mind. Their thinking, their mind is going to be affected because we are a unity. But you don't infer from that, if your hardware is broken, you don't infer the software doesn't exist. You just recognize it's not that as a unity, it's not functioning properly.
Does he know that the software is physical?
I don't think he does.
Like
but
for
also,
instance,
to put it in correct context of the analogy, it's like saying, because your head receives an injury, you're inferring that your mind doesn't exist, because that's a better fit for the software thing. Like, no, we all agree that the mind is a real thing.
Yeah, but if
it's
you're
just not spiritual.
If you're comparing it to the software, if you take a hammer to that hard disk and destroy the hard disk, you will destroy the software. Right? That program will no longer be intact. Okay, when you go to recover it, and just say you get bad sectors throughout the hardware. In the old, sort of pre-solid state drives, you would get these platter hard drives, and they would get bad sectors all the time. It's where the actual structure has decayed sometimes, and it's become corrupted. Right? Like, so when you actually damage the hardware, you do damage the software. So this analogy is literally fighting against you. What you're saying is that if you damage that hardware, you put that software on another hard disk, it'll work just fine. No, it won't. No, it won't, because that corrupted sector, that's it. That's it for that. It won't. The software will be affected by that physical damage. Now, it may be, it may not be if it's not in a vital part, but it will be affected. What the fuck? It's like burning a floppy disk and then saying, well, the software's still perfectly fine. No, it's not. No.
It's floating in software space.
Right. No, it's not. The software depends on the physical structure to have those electrons in 0 or 1 or however it's being stored in order to be that software. If you destroy that hard disk or that storage, the software is gone. It's destroyed. Wow. Okay, wow.
He says there's no meaningful universe, there's no plan, there's no design. Well, that's just proving my point. He absolutely asserted exactly what I was saying. And on that basis, there can be no rational discussion or rational debate of any evidences for anything.
Why not?
Well,
why not?
I mean, he's making a good case that there can be no rational discussion with him, anyway.
Well, yeah, but just because there's no overarching plan for the universe, just because there is no purpose inbuilt to the universe, that it wasn't created with purpose, that we can't have a rational discussion about the state of the universe around us, that does not follow, sir. That does not follow. If randomly a coin falls out of my pocket, or a person places it there, we can still discuss whether there is a coin there and how it got there. Like, I don't see this following. Because the universe may have formed due to natural processes, we can't discuss it rationally. What? I don't see that as following. And you can say, oh, but if all of your brain was created by random mutations, yes, but it was selected for. And the most rational brains are probably the ones to survive. It was selected for. Now that would probably mean there's things like biases and poor thinking and things that we do see as you are evidencing yourself, coming out here. But that's why we need to be rational. We need to overcome these. And we can tell rationality is the best way to evaluate the world because it produces the best results. Wow, okay. Wow.
And therefore, Dan, to get up and challenge me in this debate on this subject, he's borrowing from my worldview. He's borrowing meaning and rationality and logic and laws of thought and language and semiotics and everything else.
That is not your worldview. All of those existed before Christianity was a thing. Before Judaism was a thing. Yeah.
Demonstrate that they're from, because your worldview is borrowing them from the freaking Greeks.
Yeah. Do you believe in the laws of logic? That was Aristotle. That was it was Aristotle. The laws of logic, Aristotle. So he wasn't a Christian. And that's where the precepts say, yeah, but he was doing it wrong because he didn't believe in a God. He just happened to come up with these things accidentally. Well, you're still borrowing from his worldview. And I'm not even certain that those laws of logic are laws in the way we would understand them. I think they are more like, the law of gravity or Boyle's law or something. They're models of the physical reality.
Cannot be justified in an atheistic worldview in order to refute me. His view is self-refuting, therefore his view of life after death doesn't amount, as I say, to a hill of beans.
Must be a Christian crowd. I don't know any neutral crowd that would applaud that. That was absolutely terrible.
Light applause. My goodness. So is there a literal hill of beans? Since ideas have weight, then I assume the beans are like, is it a hill or is it like a little pile?
This was just a masterclass in how not to strawman somebody. Like, he's just going for sort of an appeal to absurdity based upon his straw man. Like, nobody thinks that the brain is purely matter, purely chemical, and it produces gas. There is no reason why that is the case. I don't know anybody that thinks that the summation of the chemical and neurological interactions in a human being is the same as a bottle of pop fizzing. Because a bottle of pop doesn't have the sensory interactions with the world around it. It doesn't. So your analogy is bad. It's just a bad analogy. No one's borrowing from your worldview, right? Your worldview, whether you do have a God or don't have a God, we can still evaluate the reality around us, regardless of whether that being exists, doesn't exist. I believe in it, don't believe in it. And I don't know why a belief in a God would somehow give you some extra edge on evaluating reality. Because as I pointed out, Hume's problem of induction becomes that much worse when you have a God. Because at any time, gravity may not work. Or people can just jump up from the dead. Even though inductively, we know that doesn't happen. We know that doesn't happen. Inductively, people aren't dead for 3 days and then jump back up, right?
Now let's call on Dan Parker for his rebuttal. Dan.
What is happening?
I think you were listening. I did not
Broke
say
it.
there is no meaning in the universe. Wasn't I very clear to say that there is meaning in the universe?
Yes, you were very clear.
What I said was there's no meaning of the universe. There's no purpose of life. There's no meaning of life. But as long as there are problems to solve, and a biological organism is designed, if I can borrow that word in a non-intelligent...
Oh, you're borrowing from his worldview.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think he's using that word not to... I believe the crowd is probably Christian. Usually when you say we are evolved to do this or evolved to do that, right? Like we are evolved as a social species. They, the young earthers will have fundamental objections to it. So I can understand why he would avoid that statement. I mean, a lot of the time, like when you say created, I don't think it necessarily means an agent. You know what I mean? Like if you say in colloquial language, a sandhill was created by the winds across the Serengeti, right? You're not actually saying that an agent came down and formed it up like someone doing a sandcastle. That's not what you're saying. But a lot of the time in these debates, you have to avoid words that you know they will jump on and go, oh, you said created, see he believes in a God. And debate shouldn't happen like that. There should be more charitable evaluations of what somebody is saying. You should be like, okay, are you using created in that context, or are you using in the context of something just forming by a certain reason? So you can sort of tell when someone is being uncharitable in a debate when they start to do crap like that, oh, you said this word, that means this. It's like, well, why don't you ask them for their meaning rather than just assuming what they mean based upon your worldview?
Sure.
...is designed by natural selection to survive because of the problems that it is solving for survival. There is rich meaning in the universe. All of our lives have rich meaning. If you're fighting a disease, if you're fighting hunger, and I went out of my way to say that, Joe is mischaracterizing what I said. And exactly.
Oh, he absolutely was. Absolutely. Barker's absolutely right here. That all was just a straw man. I don't know if it's deliberate, but he just wasn't listening. But yeah, absolutely. He's not wrong. And I think that sort of, I mean, he used evolve, so obviously, I think that, so when you're talking about evolutionary survival, it makes sense that there's a number of different ways of thinking depending on the situation. If you're in a tight spot, if you're in trouble, your intuition is very handy. It's very, very fast, and you can take quick, deliberate actions based upon just a gut feeling or your emotions and your subconscious just propelling you. Very, very useful in certain situations. There are other situations where that's type 1 thinking. Type 2 thinking is sitting down and thinking rationally. Yeah, it's a lot more reliable, but it's a hell of a lot slower. So it makes sense that we have different types of thinking depending on the situation. The thing is that what Joe wants to do is say, oh, my intuition says it, therefore it's reliable. No, it's not. No, rationality is way more reliable. But it's not fast, and you've got to put effort in. Sometimes some people think it's not even worth putting the effort in. I can't dispute them. You know, there's people that don't want to talk about a God. They don't want to talk about religion. They don't want to talk about any of this stuff because they just don't see the payoff. That, in a way, can be a survival mechanism in itself. Like if we've got better things to do, sometimes we just don't, our bodies and our minds just don't pay attention to the stuff that doesn't matter right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's really interesting. I was watching, I think it was a Bear Grylls thing on, like, people stuck out on an island, and the journalist asked, like, oh, did you have any romantic entanglements with the people while you were surviving on this island? And everybody, well, at least this one person said, and it was explained by Bear Grylls later, like, they said, oh, absolutely not. Like, there was no sex drive whatsoever. And Bear Grylls explained, and I think this is true, that when your survival is at hand, you don't have enough water or food, your body shuts that down. It's not important, right? Like, your body, it's not even a conscious choice that you make. Your body will go, I need to survive. I need to get water. I need to get food. I need to, do all of these things. And you've got absolutely no sex drive whatsoever. It's wild, but that's what your body does because it's evolved to survive. Why would that happen?
Perfect sense to me.
It makes perfect sense if it's evolution. But if you've been created and God wants you to go forth and multiply, why does it do that? It's wild, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a luxury thing. Like, to even begin the process to raise a child requires a certain degree of stability and excess of resources and so forth. So it stands to reason that to even begin one, like, you have to be comfortable to get into the mood. You have to have food and protection from the weather and so forth, and not be worried about stuff to eat for that to even happen. Yeah.
Like this whole idea of, I am the mind, I am in charge. We have a lot less control over ourselves than we think we do. I mean, we can override all kinds of stuff, but there are certain things that happen that we don't have control over. Yeah, absolutely, Saf. When you're under stress, that can just evaporate and you don't have control over it. Absolutely. I'm right there on board with you. But it's just fascinating that seems to be a product of evolution, which sort of the ones that survived were the humans that survived were the ones who, when crap went down and they desperately had to survive, their sex drive just turned off. There's also, I was reading something on this. There is a chemical that manufactures disgust, and when you start to starve, the chemical's no longer produced, and you find eating horrible things no longer disgusting. Like bugs and stuff like that. Like, there's a survival mechanism that allows you to eat things you ordinarily wouldn't eat if you are starving. Like, if you are literally starving. And they have sort of tied this with people eating other people. Like, how people who are in that circumstance overcome it. Apparently, part of it is neurological, not mental. That literally your brain stops considering this stuff as disgusting. I mean, there was that in, I think it was Peru, those soccer players, they made a movie about it, Alive, where they crashed and there was, very small amount of food. They had to survive, and they also had to have enough energy to get down the mountain. And so starving to death, it's not unusual that people will do that. This stream has turned real dark real fast. You can blame me for that. Dark ass tangents in the chat.
What is it, Joe, that you're asking me to refute? You said I couldn't refute. your arguments, but exactly what is it that's on the table here that you're asking me to refute? Define a spirit, define a soul. When you do unplug the computer, of course the computer stops functioning. There's code written on a piece of paper that you could plug into another computer and run that code if it's the right chip that can run it. And I used to be a computer programmer, so I know a little bit about all that. And you can pass it from one computer to the other, just like with reading and with ideas, we can share ideas with each other. But DNA is code. The DNA, the genetics that we have inherited from our struggling, surviving ancestors that have passed down to us because of natural selection, in a non-intelligent but still designed way by natural selection, we have ended up with some code. And when that could...
Yeah, I mean, I see the metaphor's a lot better than his.
Yeah.
I'm
instinctively cringing because I hate it when people call DNA code. I get he's using it metaphorically, but like you were saying earlier, it's one of those words that sometimes the dishonest theists will jump on.
Yes, yeah. So, do I think DNA is code? No, it's definitely not Turing complete. Definitely not. It does not, because code itself, like computer code, the architecture of computers, it doesn't read code, right? What it reads is instruction sets, right? So a computer physically is made in a way that those series of zeros and ones, and I mean, they're not even zeros and ones, they're electron or non-electron, or on or off, basically. Like, it just reads that and then performs certain instructions based upon what sort of sequence that is in, and that will be physically manufactured into the computer, right? That is a physical circuit pathway. That's how the computer works. DNA is not working like that. The closest you could say it's closer to an instruction set than a code, right? Because the physical makeup is what's causing that chemical to produce a reaction in the proteins. Like, it's not like code. That's not what it is. Not really. It's more like an instruction set. You can say, hey, all instruction sets are written. Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. But whereas the instruction set is generated from how the actual architecture is made of the computer, like the circuit board of the motherboard, that's basically what's happening here. The physical makeup is determined by the code. The code. So it's way different. It's not analogous. I really don't think so. But I don't know enough about DNA to say that for sure. Right? I don't know enough about it. Because I know a lot about computer architecture. I don't know a ton about DNA. I know enough, but I don't know a ton about it.
Yeah, there's similarities. It'd take a long time to go into, but it's similar, but it's not.
Well, people think that computers run code, and they don't. They process instruction sets. The code is what we have that is then translated into an instruction for a computer, line by line by line.
Right. So in a way, you could say DNA is a code in the same way binary is a code. Like you were saying earlier, it's actually electron or non-electron. It's on or off. We use zeros and ones so that it's easier for us to write the instruction set.
Correct.
Similarly, DNA isn't actually A's and C's and T's and so forth. That's what we call the molecules that exist within the strand. And even those names we made up, but in that sense, calling it A, C, T, G, and sometimes U, is a bit of a code because it's our shorthand for each individual complex molecule we're referring to, that in turn calls for specific amino acid that in a right order will effectively create a protein, assuming, and it's not even just the DNA, the protein then has to be folded in the right way for it to be effective.
Right.
So there's it's not even just the instructions, you know, it's like, there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Computer's unplugged, there's no functioning there. And when your body is unplugged, there's no functioning there. You could look at somebody's cell and say, oh, look at this person. In fact, we can tell now from genetics what diseases you might be likely to get, or maybe even what proclivities you might want to get. But I think most of you can see one of the category mistakes that Joe is making. He's saying the atoms on a piece of paper don't tell us anything about the meaning of the words. Of course not. The laws of physics, you know, from quantum mechanics.
Yeah, the atoms on the piece of paper, yeah. So is that a category error, or is that a composition division fallacy?
I think it's closer to composition division, but I was just thinking atoms on a piece of paper, atoms in anything. Like, there was a hypothesis in the middle of the 20th century that if you had perfect knowledge of any single atom, you could use it to deduce knowledge about every other atom in the universe, its location, its distance, its energy state, and so forth. It would take a lot of processing, but perhaps you could actually figure that out. I don't know that there's any, it's more of like a fun idea, but not really a realistic thing. But there is this, the presence of atoms on a sheet of paper. It may not tell you the purpose of the universe, but it'll tell you a hell of a lot about the universe you're in, you know, like how math works and the strong nuclear force and all sorts of things.
Yeah, but I think that understanding the state of the universe isn't assigning purpose to it. Like if we understand how the universe formed and its state at the moment, like it says nothing about the universe having any purpose. And I think that even though, even if the universe itself has no purpose, I think Dan's right. It doesn't stop us from having purpose. So I think him saying, I didn't say there was no purpose in the universe. I said the universe itself has no purpose. So yeah, and he's right. That is sort of a very important point. But yeah, why atoms? Like even words don't have any real prescriptive definition. Like there's no hard definition for words. They're just abstractions that we identify a concept with. Like so, if I say aura, that might mean a different thing to a spiritual person as to a physicist investigating radioactive auras as to a zoomer who's like, you know, that aura gives you riz. You know what I mean? Like I don't, you know, these aren't set in stone things. They are merely communication of abstractions. Like we've got to understand that words can be used in all kinds of different ways, and there is no reason why a certain word has to represent something any more than those atoms have to represent something on a paper.
From string theory, or whatever you want to call it, are another level up, another logical level up. The laws of physics are working a certain way, but that doesn't tell us about how chemistry is going to work in the side of a cell. When you're looking at how a cell functions, you don't look down at the individual atoms. You're looking at a functioning organism, and it's that functioning that gives us the meaning of it. And from the cell, then we build up our own bodies, and there's even brain cells. So what a silly thing to say that we can't understand consciousness by looking at the physics of brain cells. Of course we can. That's a non-question. Why are you even raising that as a question?
Yeah, it's stupid. Because we understand so much more about brain. So in the days of Jeebus, right, that you'll see a lot of language in the Bible sort of saying he felt it in his heart. He believed in his heart. In his heart he knew. Right, and there's a reason for that, because at that time, people believed that your thoughts came from your heart. Literally, that was what was doing the thinking. that the heart was the source. They didn't think the brain was doing that. Right? Like that is, it's called cardiocentric thinking. And the reason why we discovered that it was the brain was from the advancement of medical science, essentially. Science went on. We discovered that, hey, you know, people can have a heartbeat and still they're not thinking, right? They don't have a consciousness, even though they have a heartbeat. Working on this, we've discovered a whole lot, and none of it is coming from religion. All of it is coming from people developing the tools to be able to understand the brain. Like, there is no separate discipline in medicine, you know, for you know, understanding the soul. There's a reason for that, because nobody has ever come up with any kind of tool to understand how the soul works. Ever.
So the brain heart thing is weirdly interesting. I've been diving into antiquity and ancient history for a few different reasons recently. So I just pulled up a couple of things real quick. And it turns out we kind of went back and forth on that one as a species. The ancient Egyptians were pretty clear on the fact that the brain was where thinking was done. The Greeks disagreed until about the 5th century BCE, when a physician named Alcmaeon of Croton proposed that the brain, not the heart, was the seat of the mind. And that was later supported by Hippocrates. Then Aristotle came along and went, nah, the heart is where blood gets heated or cooled, and thus your mood, your temper, if you will, gets hot or cold, and that controls your emotion. And then a few centuries later, in 170, Galen comes along and goes, no, I'm doing surgeries on people and shit. It's pretty clearly the brain. And then the Dark Ages happened, and we just went all kinds of superstitious. Okay, the Middle Ages, forgive me, historian friends. And then in the Enlightenment period, Thomas Willis was like starting to redo the anatomy thing. He's like, you know, we need to learn a little bit more about how the body functions. And he's like, no, guys, I think Galen was right. It was probably the brain. So we just went back and forth on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I want to point out that none of those people making those discoveries were philosophers or priests. They were physicists, they were scientists, they were naturalists before scientists were a thing. You know, like they were people checking out the physical reality. That's the whole point. You know, like all of these discoveries, the reason why we know how the brain works, the reason why we can treat certain disorders and certain problems is because we examine the brain. Because there is, like, if we can't examine the mind and the brain, then what the hell is neurology, psychology, and psychiatry for? Like, what are you talking about?
It's for black occult magic, like Ouija.
Oh, yeah. Because people are obsessed with the occult, right? All of these psychologists obsessed with the occult of the mind. Yes.
Bertrand Russell, in his debate with Father Copplestone, was pointing out the mistake of a lot of theistic assumptions to treat everything as if it were flat. We do know that there are levels upon, when you look at the weather, when you look at how clouds move, you don't look at quantum mechanics. I suppose you could reduce it all in some way, but it's meaningless to reduce it. We reduce it to the point where it makes some kind of a sense to us. So this is not a debate between worldviews, as Joe's trying to point out. And what if this were cereal box atheism? Why is that an insult? I mean, what's wrong with cereal? I mean, what's wrong with a box that has something in it? I mean, why attack somebody with these, you know, rhetorical insults? You know, if atheism is nothing new, well, then Christianity's not new either. When my ancestors, the Native American tribe that my dad comes from, were on this...
I didn't know he came from, like, he has Native American ancestry. That's interesting. That's cool. I did not know that. And I've watched a lot of Dan Barker debates, a lot of them on this channel and yours, Ember, and I'd never knew that. That's fascinating.
Continent, probably 15,000 years ago, which was 9,000 years before the world was created, when you think about it. I mean, that was... None of them believed in the Christian God. None of them had the revelation of the resurrection of Jesus. Did they not have meaning in their lives? Did they not have love? Did they not? Some of them might have thought there was an afterlife. Some don't. There are some tribes that have no concept of an afterlife at all and think that life is dead. So the Christian revelation didn't really answer anybody's meaning in life. It's a new thing. Christianity is, we've heard it for over and over. So to attack another person's worldview because you've heard it before, well, the knife cuts in both directions. Joe admits, in his own word, there's a paucity of empirical evidence. And by the way, I did not use the word apocalypse. Those were not my exact words, as you said. I did believe in the end of the world. I didn't know what I thought about the apocalypse, but I did believe that Jesus was coming soon, and I preached that. And the Bible says that. Even Jesus preached that. He said there will be some of you who won't taste death until you see the end. Paul even believed that.
Yeah, and that was your point, Ember. If apocalyptic preaching is bad, then Jesus was doing it wrong because he was apocalyptic preaching. He was saying the end of the world is coming and it will be soon.
Every generation of Christians has had a subset which thought we were living in the end times. Like, we're in a special time right now.
I'm in two minds. I don't think he should defend this. I think he should just go, yeah, well, I was wrong. But there's a lot of Christians preaching the same thing now, and I think they're wrong as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the appalling part about what Joe's doing. He's holding beliefs from decades ago on he should be addressing his arguments as they are now, not what he believed decades ago. Why is that relevant? I suppose it's because Dan Barker brought it up, but a much better way to address it would be, what you think you were wrong. What's that got to do with proving that you're right? I think that's a much better way to go about it rather than just, do this ad hominem. Well, you're an apocalyptic preacher. Why does that matter? A lot of Christians are.
The Millerites in the 1830s and the Jehovah's Witnesses in 1914 and some modern Christians today. So Joe admits there's a paucity of empirical evidence. We are survival machines. We have brains that function more or less good enough. They're not perfect, and there's, if I were designing your brain, I would probably think of a better way to do it, but we were designed by the laws of nature to have perceptions about the natural world that we live in as natural organisms.
Yeah, no, I get him. If I designed a brain, there would be a lot differently designed, to fit my environment. It would be designed a lot differently and not have certain hang-ups that seem to cause a lot of problems. I'd probably design it with a lot less aggression for the modern world, right? Like, why so much aggression? If we've got to work together, that's the best way to go. It's kind of wild, right? I would design it with a lot less biases. Why all the preconceptual biases that we have? Doesn't seem well designed.
There's a lot of potential improvements. I kind of wonder about, the billionaires are crazy people and they're ruining the planet, but sometimes the visions they have, and there may be a seed of usefulness in them. Like the general concept behind Neuralink is there's pluses and minuses, but one thing it would do is give us a greater degree of autonomy over our own thinking. Because so much, like we were talking about earlier, so much of what we do biologically is automatic. It's on autopilot. So much is influenced by that pesky endocrine system, Yeah,
no, I get you. I think that Neuralink is incredible technology. I just don't trust the people that are developing it. This whole idea of, hey, we can have a neural link to electronic devices is absolutely wild and fantastic, just awesome. But I do not, from the actions of the people that are developing it, I do not trust them to use it in the best interests of people and not in the best interests of themselves. And I think there is enough justification to say that. it isn't the technology I have a problem with, it's the people that I have the problem with, how they will use it. Because I sincerely believe that they will use it to enrich themselves, and that is not necessarily the best thing for us. So, I think that this system has to change significantly, and I even would have concerns if the system changed enough that this had to be used for the betterment of everybody, because systems change, and that is not necessarily the case in the future. Even if we have a system now where technology is being used in the best interests of people, things change. And, the next government who is implementing this technology may not be using it for the best purpose for the people in the future. So I have issues with that. Corporate world makes me cry.
We bump into other things, and there's harm and there's damage that can come from it. So because of that, we have DNA, we have a structure built into us from the accidental process of natural selection that allows us to make mental models of reality. It may be philosophically that our mental images are not right, and maybe our memories just can't be trusted. But it's all we've got, and it's all Joe has. And when Joe reads the Bible, and when Joe gets these feelings about Jesus in the Bible, that's all he's got. That's all I've got. Maybe it is totally absurd. So what? What's wrong with absurdity? Maybe there is no meaning to it all. So what? Would you rather have the facts, or would you rather have wishful thinking? We do know, though, that within this level, logical level, within this functioning brains that we do have, we have a kind of basic optimal functioning where we can make informed decisions about what seems to be that real world out there. If it's not out there, then we're all victims of an accidental joke, I suppose. But in the meantime, we all live our lives as if the perceptions that we receive from nature, which created us, nature is not our God, but nature is our creator, that they more or less represent most of the time, and sometimes we're...
Now, when you say nature isn't really a thing. It's more a category than anything else. It's more an abstraction. It's just the natural world. I don't know. I think, I don't know. Sort of saying nature is our creator is kind of, I get what you mean in a metaphorical way, but, I don't think nature is an actual thing. I think that it's a category of things that we put into that's just abstract. As opposed to artificial, which, is just what humans have made.
Right. Nature, it's a term that only has meaning in context, like natural versus artificial, or natural versus supernatural.
Supernatural, yeah.
Yeah. It depends on what you're talking about, but it isn't like an entity with a will.
Right.
We're wrong. Sometimes our instincts are wrong. Most of the time give us an empirical basis for making judgments about the natural world that we live in. The way our brains function isn't great, isn't perfect, and I know it depends where you fall on the bell curve of brain functioning or emotion or that. But we're making it. We're getting through, and someday we're all going to be extinct, and it's not going to matter. There won't be any meaning or any memory to us, but we live now, and isn't that precious? I mean, isn't that worth something? Life doesn't need a meaning. Life doesn't need a purpose. Life is its own reward. Are we more than the sum of our parts? No, we're not. But what's wrong with that? Aren't you happy with what you have? If you're not, you're going to...
I think we are, but I think that emergent things are more than the sum of their parts. You know what I mean? Like, I think that emergent properties, sort of because of synergy, can be more than the sum of their parts. I think that a car can be more than the sum of its parts, kind of thing. I think that a mall can be more than the sum of its parts. Like, you have the attraction of going to a store, but when you put them all together with food and other stuff, it becomes an experience, kind of thing. Like, that can be more than the sum of its parts. I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing to say, but what we've got to understand, that the more is not being created by a supernatural invisible thing floating there. It's being created with synergy between the parts, like parts basically making the other part better because that is there, right? Like it's not something extra coming in. Yeah,
exactly. It's like the Comic-Con that I run every year at the start of June. There's something unique. All the vendors, the merchants, the artists, the crafters, they're all out in the world doing their own thing every day. The same thing with the talent, the performers. They're many of them are on social media, sometimes daily, or the ones that aren't are producing the things that they normally produce. Every single part of that event exists on its own in the world, but when you bring them all together, you get more than all of them together.
yes.
You get the additional experience of all of the interactions that are possible. Like a person from TikTok interacting with a voice actor from an anime that would never happen in any other circumstance,
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that this is just emergent synergies, and they provide more than just each together doing their individual thing. But a lot of that is value based, like what kind of values are you getting out of this? So I don't mind it. I don't mind that aphorism. I really don't. But I think Dan's trying to avoid it because, oh well, if it's more of the sum of its parts, it has to come from something supernatural. No, absolutely not. Like, even if you just consider the physical things of a marriage, for instance, the parenting can be more than the sum of its parts. Like if you both did what you did independently from one another, yet together, it's much better if you work in concert with each reinforcing the other. That's more than the sum of its parts. That's what it means. I don't know why anybody has to interpret it in a different way. It's weird.
You're going to look for something like a Thor on Thursday. You're going to look for something like a Jesus. If you're not happy, if you feel empty in some way, then plug that gap with your God of choice, depending on the culture you live within. So, no, we are not more than matter, but we are matter that is functioning. This matter that we have, this brain cells that we have, this consciousness is a label not for a thing at all. And until Joe gives us some kind of if I'm thinking about a mouse and thinking about an elephant, of course my brain's not going to get heavier. Isn't Joe proving my point? Joe's proving my point that there is no reality. There's no actual physical reality to these labels that are within our brains. There is no soul. There is no thing there. When that functioning stops, and you all know how your brain waves and brain states can alter, and how things, the Phineas Gage story, when his frontal lobe was blown out, how his whole personality changed. And
well, it's more than that. Phineas Gage developed two different personalities that did disagree with one another on multiple things. That's the thing. The brain and the mind, it's not like you just because you have a consciousness, it doesn't mean that this does one part in the brain, this does another. It's more that those functions of your mind are spread out around multiple areas. It's wild in the way that it works, but we do know that your imaginative side of the brain and the logical side of the brain are different sides. They happen on different places. So, but Phineas Gage was sort of the most famous split brain patient, and that is wild what happens. Absolutely wild. But it isn't that his personality changed. He developed two personalities. One for the left side of his brain and one for the right side of his brain, which is wild.
There is no central you there. The you that you think you are is changing and shifting because of biological factors, because of chemical, because of drugs, because of diet, because of environment, because of pollution, because of social things. There's all this flux. You think you are a single person that has a thing that's going to live on. It's your body that matters. We are matter. We are material. We do know, and I wasn't saying that there's only matter in the universe, although that seems to be the most logical conclusion. What I'm saying is that Joe and I both agree there's matter.
Yep.
Joe's a materialist because he believes there's matter as well as I do.
Well, that's not true. Materialist in philosophy, a materialist is someone who believes there's only matter. Okay, let's make that clear. A materialist is defined as someone that thinks there is nothing immaterial in the universe. It's all matter or energy or, you know, physical stuff, basically. So that isn't quite true. But yeah, his point is clear. Joe agrees with me. There is matter in the universe. I think, I think he's going to warm up to, hey, you've got to show the extra stuff that I don't postulate, but you do.
He's making an additional assertion.
Yep.
An assertion which he has not supported with any evidence. All he has told you to do is put on some kind of glasses of assumption, a bias that he says, inner conviction that the God of a particular Middle Eastern Bronze Age tribe happens to be the one true revealed God of history. You're free to do that in this country. But millions of us realize that that's just wishful thinking. That's sort of a denial of human nature. It's a kind of dismissal of who we really are. It's like, no, we aren't. It's a pretense that we are more than the sum of our parts.
Yeah, and so wishful thinking, that's sort of that's one of the things I've called an appeal to consequence, right? Like if you're saying, oh, but heaven's got to be true because you would go to this wonderful place. Yeah, you wish it were true. So you can also have the negative one of it, like, oh, that can't be true because that, evolution can't be true because that would mean we're just animals kind of thing. That is still an appeal to consequence. It's not wishful thinking. I suppose it is in a way. You're wishing that wasn't true, but that is the way that I've framed it. So I like how he's using wishful thinking and not going to the technical term of the fallacy, but it is. That's exactly what it is. It's kind of, oh, well, I wish I had this wonderful immortal being of my character that when I die, it lives on. Okay. Why should we believe it? Because wishing it true is not good enough. That we know our biases. That's no reason to think it's true.
Yeah, and that should be like really easy to demonstrate after a fashion. Like whether it's reincarnation or ghosties, like whatever, life after death. Like whether it's in a body or in spiritual form or whatever, the consciousness that exists beyond death, it should be demonstrable and it should be fairly easy. Like, tell me a secret that, you knew about a thing that happened when I was 7 years old. You're the only one who was there. Tell me what it is, like it should be easy to verify.
Yeah.
Sticking with what we do know. And if there is life after death, I think that was what our debate was about. I would like to see some evidence, something that would lead us,
anything,
skeptics, to at least consider that possibility, but it's not there. And
conclude now, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that if Joe had any evidence that life didn't indeed go after death, he would be presenting it and not just attacking this incredulous to him idea that there is no supernatural things. Right? Like he seems to be more attacking this idea than presenting his own side. And I think it is trying to shift the burden of proof to say, hey, you've got to show that there's nothing supernatural. No, I don't. You have to show there is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of clapping.
The third part of our program will be one of cross-examination.
Okay.
Dan, you said that meaning...
How do you feel about cross-examination? I really like it. I think cross is really good. I think that it can really get some interesting answers out of people when they've got to answer the question.
When people are prepared for it, it's usually quite good. If it's people who... I've seen some that have gone very badly, and either the people didn't prepare or didn't know it was coming, so didn't prepare, or didn't understand how it works because they're brand new, or whatever the case may be. I have seen them go badly. But when people are prepared, you get some really, I think it's more useful in terms of the structure of debate and getting to the point than an open discussion section is.
Yeah.
Is not, there's no meaning of, there's meaning in.
Have I been playing this?
So,
God damn it.
The meaning then is something that we give. So meaning is purely personal. Is there, if meaning is purely personal and there are 350 people in this room, how do we judge whose meaning is valid?
What do you mean? Why do we have to judge whose meaning is valid? Like, I don't understand. Like, okay, you believe in Christ and Christianity, and so does 50% of the room. How do we know which one is valid? Right? Like, this is the whole point. You can't do that even when everybody is agreeing on things, like agreeing on a religion. I don't understand which one's valid. Oh, yours is valid. Yeah, and they all say the same thing. Yes. Mm-hmm. So, the Christians can't agree on it either. But I think that it's valid to them. And if you ask, well, what's valid to society, we kind of all agree on that together. We have a consensus together. Yeah.
Which is true. What's the basis for validating your meaning over mine?
There's no meaning of life. And if there's a God, there's no meaning of his life either, because he doesn't exist within a context. Meaning comes from solving problems, right? So you might have a sibling who died of a horrible disease. So you devote your life to fighting that disease. You're solving a problem. That's meaningful to you.
Okay.
I don't have a sibling that died of that horrible disease.
Can I come to that point
But
then?
I'm trying to answer your
Solving
question.
problems?
I'm trying to answer your question. The fact that there are multiple meanings in life doesn't cheapen meaning. In fact, it enhances meaning. The fact that we can all find the meaning through our attempts to solve whatever problem it is you're trying to solve. That's what meaning means.
Okay. So obviously people perceive different things to be problematic. So some people see a lack of wealth distribution as a problem in the United States, others don't. To use an extreme example, Hitler thought he was solving a problem by getting rid of all the Jews.
Oh, what is it, Godwin's Law?
1 hour 6.
1 hour 6. Well, I mean, he hasn't compared him to it, but so wealth distribution, you can make an argument that if the people at the top want to continue, they should distribute the wealth more evenly, because we have seen the results of unequal wealth distribution, say in France, and it did not go well for the people at the top. Right? So if they do want a functioning society, then they should use wealth distribution. If they want to stay wealthy, because here's the thing, like, they rely on society giving them that wealth, that providing for them that wealth. They don't just go out there and, download it from God directly or something. That isn't what's happening. They are reaping the rewards of society functioning in a certain way. And if they want that to continue, then they ought to redistribute wealth. If they don't, well, we disagree then about what we want to achieve. But, at that point, your goals are incompatible and you have to work out. But if they want there to be a productive, healthy society that still allows them to make money, then hoarding wealth is not what they ought to do, because that will result in bad things happening to them, right? Not everyday people. When people are desperate, society will break down. They'll no longer be able to make money. Okay,
well,
so
it's also counterproductive to their own aims. Like, I realize that many of them are not really all that bright, and so they think it's just like a high scoreboard in their competition with the other ultra wealthy. But the functional power of wealth is the ability to do stuff. You can make stuff, you can own stuff, you can buy politicians and pass laws, whatever, but you have to use the wealth. So accruing vast amounts of it deprives it of its purpose, and it deprives yourself of your own ability to exercise that power that you've accumulated. It's very strange.
Yeah, but they
I would
do use
argue,
it. They usually invest it.
oh, sure, sometimes, yeah. Yeah, that's like a big part of what makes up Musk's trillionaire status,
Right.
which apparently he lost again because so much of it was tied up in stocks, and when stock value goes down, his wealth just vanishes because it doesn't actually exist. He doesn't have $1 trillion. He has a stamp collection that's been appraised at $1 trillion.
Well, it was artificially inflated for a little while when SpaceX went public. It was sort of artificially inflated because it was the stock to have. So a lot of people wanted it. Demand was high, so the price increased. But you know, when you invest it and it goes into investment, it's being used for something. But the problem comes that it's not going back to people in the lower stratums of society, like the lower class, the middle class. It's going to, like, it's being kept up in the top rungs of society kind of thing, and corporate interests. Now, corporations may provide jobs, but we're getting to the point where having a job does not necessarily mean that you'll be able to provide for yourself and your family. And when that happens, people will get desperate, because even though they've got a job, they still can't maintain any quality of life. They suffer.
I wonder what we were talking about earlier with that neurological trigger that disables the disgust mechanism so that you can eat less wholesome things in order to not die. I wonder if the social contract works the same way. Like if we, like that Rat City study that was done several decades ago at this point, where the rats were deliberately overpopulated, and when they reached a certain critical point, it's like a switch flipped in all their brains and they got really, really savage with each other all of a sudden. I wonder if human civilization, well, humans as a species have a similar thing. If we reach a certain point of desperation, will a switch flip and all of a sudden we basically become locusts?
I don't know. I mean, I've read a book that, I mean, it was a book, it wasn't a paper, but it sort of suggested that rats, when overpopulated, they you know, you get serial killer rats who will just kill rats around them, and that it may be a response to overpopulation. I don't know for sure. Like I said, it was a book and not a paper, but it's an interesting question. Is the sort of the way that sort of humans become violent a reaction to overpopulation? Is that something that happens? I don't know.
I don't know that it's necessarily overpopulation, but like desperation along the same lines as the food supply thing, because we've been doing sociological studies on inner cities for a very long time. And despite our government's every effort to make it out to be race, it doesn't seem to have any correlation to race. It's economic conditions. If the people cannot survive in a law-abiding way, they will try to survive in a non-law abiding way.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, when he's asking who is right, well, if your goal is to have a functioning, healthy society, even if you're the one making money off that, then hoarding wealth is a bad thing. By your own metric, it's a bad thing, because that will not enable you to do the thing that you want to do. Like, there's got to be some form of wealth redistribution in order for you to continue doing what you're doing, or else there's going to, like, we know that there's going to be massive problems. So this is something where you can say, well, it's not only immoral from what I want to have happen, it's immoral from your own standpoint. And the same I would apply to the Nazis, right? To, you know, Godwin's law came up. Hitler thought he was doing this, this, and this. Yes, but Hitler wanted to establish the 1,000-year Reich, the 1,000-year control over the entire earth. And what he did would not get him to that, right? Like, there was going to be the rest of Europe turn on him. There was going to be America turning on him because he wanted to establish German rule over half the planet. And he probably would turn upon Japan once everybody else had been, dealt with.
Definitely.
Basically declaring war on over half the planet would not get him to the 1,000-year Reich that he wanted.
And exterminating large chunks of his own population wasn't a great plan either.
Right. Yeah. And sort of, so one of the things I was talking about recently was abortion in Germany. Right. And people will go, oh, the Germans had abortion. Well, they forced it on people, but they actually banned it for other people. Right. They had an abortion ban, and their abortion ban was on blonde, white, Aryan people. They weren't allowed to get them. They had to reproduce, the white people, essentially. So, this is you can say, hey, there was abortion, but, that's fine. But they were forcing it on people they saw as undesirable, and banning it for people they saw as desirable. That was the problem. Because then, part of your population is not renewing, and it's only a certain segment.
Yeah, the forced sterilizations. There was, things that we're doing now in the U.S., but that's a whole other issue. As to what he was saying about, it's not that no one cares about wealth redistribution, or not everyone cares. Everyone cares to some extent. Every issue is ranked on an order of priority, right? Like, so for a person who can't afford to feed their children today, they care about wealth redistribution. It would obviously help with their situation to some extent, depending on how it's executed. But they have much more pressing concerns.
Yeah.
The gypsies and creating a super race. Stalin thought he was solving a problem for the Soviet Union by eliminating about 40 million people. So how I asked the question, how are we to judge who's...
Yeah, so the Stalin, what he did, it was complicated. It's not like he definitely did take out a lot of people. I'm certainly not arguing that. I think there was sort of an Armenian genocide, and there was a lot of horrible stuff done to a lot of people. Anybody opposing communism would be shot. Like, totally not saying he was but the large number of deaths from Stalin really was the way in which he operated. Like, because if you delivered bad news, for instance, to the Stalin regime, he would have you executed. There was a lot of people who died of starvation because they were afraid to tell them that they didn't produce enough food, or that he took the food and redistributed it to the Red Army. There's a lot of, a lot of people died as a consequence of Stalin's actions, but he didn't go out to kill them directly. Same with Mao, right? Mao, I mean, there was a lot of executions. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It was absolutely horrible. But a lot of the deaths was due to incompetence, or as a indirect result of their selfish actions, rather than deliberate and, execution of these people. So that's a bit of a miscolorization, because Stalin didn't go out intending to do that. It was just a consequence of his ineptitude and his, stupid policy decisions that really didn't do a good service to his people.
Is it the dominant meaning? Is the person with the most power? How are we to judge which meaning, or what is a problem? People diagnose the problems of the social order completely differently.
You're confusing meaning with morality. They're two separate things. Meaning is solving problems. Hitler had a meaningful life. Stalin had a meaningful life. Those who resisted Hitler had a meaningful life. Those who resisted Stalin had meaningful lives. They were trying to solve problems. And Hitler, by the way, often credited Jesus as his inspiration for exterminating the Jews. He was a
Yep. Well, I mean, I don't know from his personal writings that, what he was complicated. I think that he had a big problem with the Catholics, although he was raised Catholic and he never renounced his religion. He hated that the Catholics started to oppose him. I think that he had this weird blend of Christianity and occultism kind of thing, almost like the Norse myths kind of thing. The chosen warrior cults of Norse fame kind of thing. Like, he was a weirdo. I'm not sure if he'd count as a Christian. I'm not sure. He certainly wasn't an atheist, because he kept referencing divine selection and divine things in his personal writings. But he really did, in his personal writings, have a lot of animosity for Christianity in general, right? Being too soft, too forgiving, too this, too that. And he really looked up to this, almost this Norse idea of strength and power kind of thing, as being the divinely chosen had these things. Really weird stuff. But he wasn't an atheist. I'll tell you that. And when you talk about his troops and stuff, yeah, they were almost all Catholic. Catholic was the predominant religion. All of his troops were generally Catholic. Sorry.
Weird Christian. I don't think he was a Christian, but he was not an atheist, obviously. Stalin probably was an atheist. We don't have any comments from Stalin. We don't have any statements that Stalin said he was doing this in the name of
So morality and meaning are unrelated, you're saying?
I didn't say they're unrelated. I said they're two separate concepts. So you're asking me a question about meaning,
you
and you bring morality into it, as if there were, you're talking about the fact that there are different meanings within our life, as if that were a problem because there's not one moral standard for all the meanings.
No, I'm saying that we define meaning differently depending on the worldview we're coming from, and that has radical consequences for how.
Yeah. So this is a cross-examination. If I were the moderator, I would say, well, can you frame that in a question? Like a question. This isn't for you arguing and giving your point of view. This is questions, my guy. Like, what? This annoys me. It annoys me, because he's just going to make statements, and then, when he has, if using questions, you can, like, there's a reason why the Socratic method is so good, right? There's a way, right? Like, so if I was Joe Boot, I'd be like, well, you get people who vastly disagree on, that wealth should be redistributed. How do you figure out which person is right in what their meaning of life should be? Right? How do you, if I think that the meaning of my life is to invade Poland and send troops across the country, how do you convince them, or how do you put across your argument that that is the wrong meaning of life?
Yeah, your meaning in life is to collect all the magical rocks from the beginning of the universe so you can snap away half the population to save the other half. That's
there you go. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a purpose, I suppose, but I mean, you could just double the food instead.
That's a good argument. Yeah. Or double the resources in general. I'm not sure how that would work, but you could do that, absolutely. I mean,
none of these actually solve the problem, but I mean, leave everything alone and just reduce the default setting for fertility by 50%. And so the population will stop growing like crazy and might stabilize or even decline a little.
Or, I mean, even without the stones, you're a powerful guy with a fleet of ships. Surely there'll be some places where they have more of one resource than another place, but they have less of another resource that other place has more of. Hey, that's called trade. Hey, wow.
Trade.
That would do a lot better.
Planets. If you have all the power, just make more habitable planets, because they're no matter how much there are in this universe and in this galaxy specifically, there could be a lot more.
Yeah, there are a million ways to better go about that wouldn't make as good a movie. But,
Yeah.
details.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this is sort of, how would you convince that person? That doesn't get you around the same problem you have. If one person believes in a God and thinks that it is the meaning, that God's meaning is to go forth and procreate, and the other person thinks the meaning is to proselytize to other people, and you disagree on what how do you figure that out?
Yeah. Or if you're raised in one of those branches where they believe that, God has a special purpose for your life, how do you find out what that is?
Right. And what if you're in the prosperity gospel and sort of the whole purpose is to make as much money as possible because that's how you know you've been blessed? How do you tell that person they're wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So, you're in the same boat. You're just pointing at a problem that, and to be fair, I'd be saying, well, yeah, you've got to convince them that it's not in their best interest to do that. Like the outcome is going to be bad for them. That's what you've got to do. And they may not believe you, and they may think they know better, and that's just life, right? Like, you can try and convince some of these idiots that Trump is a terrible idea to have in charge. How do you convince them of that? Well, you point out all the bad things that will happen. They have happened, and maybe they will learn for next time, but you can't convince them. Like, that's just the reality of the situation, right? Maybe if you predict all of these bad things happening and bad things happen, that they'll know for next time, but that doesn't help you right now. Which is bad, and it's horrible, and yeah, it'd be great to have an objective thing that you could just say, well, that's automatically definitely bad. But we don't have that. And you don't have that because you're always arguing with other Christians over what the meaning God wants you to do.
We judge what is the right meaning to adopt. I mean, how can you separate morality and meaning? That's totally absurd.
There's no right meaning to adopt.
Right, okay.
Why are you even saying that?
That's
meaning. There's no right meaning to adopt. You're in this mystic mindset, right?
That's helpful. There's no right meaning to adopt.
Exactly. That's because your meaning isn't what you're pretending. Morality is a different question. If you want to ask me a question about moral standards and how non-believers find moral principles, objectively grounded, you can do that. But when we're talking about meaning itself.
Man, he's interrupting every he's trying to interrupt, and I do like that Dan Dennett is not letting him. He's speaking like in the middle of a sentence, and Dan Dennett just keeps on going. You can do this in a debate. Dan Barker, sorry, yeah. He just keeps on going. Like, you don't have to let people talk over the top of you. I mean, I grant you it's really difficult with some people, but he's making himself look like such an asshole right now. Because he's asked the question, he starts to respond, and then he's just talking. Like, don't you want to hear the answer? No, he doesn't. He's just like a lot of these right-wing debate bros. He is just waiting to hear something he can jump in on top of. He's not actually listening to the answer.
It sounds silly, but it's meaningless to talk about there being one meaning. If you think there's just one meaning, then you need a God.
Yes, you do.
So you've
now, to have an ultimate meaning.
Well, if you think you need an ultimate meaning, then you need a God. That's a problem that you have because of your inability.
It's the only way to judge which meanings are valid.
You don't judge meanings. You don't judge whether a meaning is valid.
Right. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is valid. I think that that perhaps that is right. You can't judge whether it's valid, but you can judge whether the chain of logic that will get you to, or the actions that will get you to that meaning are in fact sound. Right? So if I have a meaning of healing people and helping people, and making them feel better, doing what Mother Teresa did and sort of refusing to give palliative patients any kind of medication or any kind of care and let them sit in agony, that does not lead to them feeling better and being, not suffering and things like that, right? If that's what I want to do, you can show that your actions do not lead to this outcome, right? They do not lead there. There's a problem there, right? you have to push back on that. And so I don't think you can, is a meaning valid? Well, it's meaningful to them. It's not to me. It may not be to the rest of society if you want to talk normatively. Your meaning of life to be the best juggler in all of history may not have any meaning to society, but that doesn't mean it has no meaning to you. And so if your meaning is to be the best juggler in all of history, and you go, well, yeah, I'm not going to practice. I'm just going to, sit around on a beach in the Caribbean and do nothing, drink Mai Tais and do nothing. That will get me to be the best juggler in all of history. You can show that does not follow. If you want to be the best juggler in all of history and you go, I'm going to practice every single day and devote my entire life to understanding how juggling works with the physics behind, that will get you to there, right? So it's not that the meaning, I get what Dan Barker is saying here. It's not the meaning we judge as valid. We judge whether the actions are valid in virtue of that goal, that problem, overcoming that problem.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a bit of word games going on, as we often see sometimes. Meaning is not a thing in and of itself. It's a description applied to a particular goal. The goal is the thing. And this is where a lot of people get hung up, is because they get this conception of a goal, and that's what gives them meaning, is achieving this goal. And then sometimes they just kind of wing it. Sometimes they have a plan, but they get hung up on the plan. The plan is not the goal, as John Scalzi wrote. The goal is the goal. Sometimes you have to change plan, but that's how you end up with people who keep doing things that are ineffective over and over, because they connect the plan with the meaning. And they're like, my meaning is to keep repeating this plan until the goal is achieved, even if it'll never get them there.
Yeah. And that's how we go along as we learn. Like, you have a plan to get this done. You try to do it in this way. It doesn't work. And, you try a different way. And maybe it's better. Maybe it's worse. It's all just trying to get to where we're going. But we know almost empirically that some things will not get you to a certain goal. And people think they will. And they won't.
Don't judge whether meaning...
Moral questions can be judged, but the question of meaning...
How do you... Okay, let's move on from that one.
And then we'll give Pat a chance to...
Okay, there's only 5...
Yeah, and you're not asking questions. You're making declarative statements. You need to ask questions. And questions can be great, right? And how do you settle a disagreement between two radically different opposing meanings? Well, you just have to agree to disagree at that point. Right. I mean, you can't convince somebody that, owning the world's finest poodle collection isn't the meaning behind their life. You can't convince somebody of that. But, I would argue that, things like killing everybody's other poodles will not get you to that goal. You will be thrown in prison. It's just... It's wild. I don't understand, and the fact is that, if I was Dan Barker, I'd be asking, well, you have a disagreement with another Christian over, what meaning your life has, whether it's to do, proselytizing or, prosperity. How do you sort out that disagreement? He can't. He just has to claim there is an objective one in the background, and he's right about it. That's what everybody else says. How do you resolve that? You can't. Because whereas I can point to, hey, this action, we know from the past actions that have been done, that won't get you to the goal. You can't do that with a God. Right, if you say God wants me to X, Y, Z, and the other person says no, God wants you to A, B, C, how do you test which one is correct? You can't.
I have another Orson Scott Card book. We're getting a lot of sci-fi literature today. So
he was a horrible person, really sexist, horrible.
He's the worst, but he wrote a lot of books, and one of them is called The Redemption of Christopher Columbus or something. And it's an interesting story after a fashion, because it involves time travel and alternate futures and so on and so forth. But one thing that the story is based on is that we don't know a whole hell of a lot about Columbus's early life. But one thing that we do know from his letters and journals and so forth is that when he was somewhere in early puberty, he'd grown up thinking that he was going to lead another great crusade to save the Holy Land from the other people who believe in the same God as him.
Yeah.
But he had a vision on a beach. A vision of the Holy Spirit appeared to him and told him, no, forget about the East, go west and bring the cross to India. The people there need salvation. And he took that as his meaning in life, that God spoke to him. Now, in the context of the story, that's time travelers from the future, that were averting some horrible future where he did lead that crusade by sending him to the New World instead. And then we end up with our world, and then people in our future fuck with him again to make a different timeline where hopefully things are better. Whatever. There's some interesting stuff in there, because they're able to reconstruct some information from the lost timeline where in that universe, because Columbus doesn't go west and spread the diseases that wipe out 97% of Native American peoples, they're populous enough and their science advances quickly enough that they end up invading Europe, and things are bad for white people, apparently. And that's a terrible future that has to be okay. In fairness, in Card's hypothetical, it was the Mexica cult running the Aztec Empire that invaded Europe, and they still practiced human sacrifice, especially of captives taken in war. And so it was very bad for the population of Europe. But
it sounds like the worst version of replacement theory ever.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
But the reason I mention it is because that idea of how do you determine what purpose God has for you? Well, sometimes somebody has a vision, and whether it's time travelers from the future, or they're just hallucinating, or whatever the case may be, they have a vision, and that's how they determine that God does have a purpose for them specifically.
Yeah. And if you know, the mustached evil man in Germany in World War II says that he had a divine revelation that, you know, he had to bring the master race to make 1,000-year Reich or something. How do you say that that isn't true? How do you know you're right and he didn't actually hear from a god? We don't know. I don't think there was any god involved. I think the guy was just nuts. You know, he was absolutely nuts. But
yeah,
you know, how do you, if we're going by whoever says that they're told by God to do something, that's true. How do you know that God didn't actually say that? Because you can't show it. But, you know, this is supposed to be, is there an afterlife, when we've descended into this morality question? I don't understand how we got here. You know, like, this is supposed to be afterlife, my guy. Why are we going into morality? He seems to be that pre-suppy of, oh, well, if you can't justify, you know, foundational beliefs in your worldview, then you can't argue about anything. My guy, you still have to show that there's an afterlife at some point. Seriously. But he seems to be hinging it on there has to be a God because morality doesn't exist without it. And it's like, well, even if it is a God, it's not your God, because that predates your God. Like, dude, what?
Yeah. Like, well, it's like we see so often with a lot of these theist debates is talk about anything except the question.
Yeah. Look, he'd be doing a lot better if he went to near-death experience, or, you know, just something other than, oh, you've got to justify your foundations. You know, this pre-sup kind of, well, you can't talk about life after death if you can't have an absolute creator that life came from. What? Why? Doesn't matter where life came from. State of affairs at the moment, I don't know where my car was made. Like, I don't know what factory it was made in. I can still talk about whether it has a rear view mirror. Like, seriously, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous.
5 minutes for cross-examination, so if he elaborates for too long, I only get one question. All right. Are there...
Too long? Too long? You've tried not to let him get a full sentence out. Wow, this is so dishonest. Wow. Joe Boot, I wish he'd be booted off of this thing. Holy crap. What a disingenuous... Wow.
Dan, are there universal laws of thought or logic which should govern this debate? And are those laws material or are they immaterial? And if they are based on how you approach that question, how does your worldview, if you believe there are laws that should govern this debate, how does your...
Does this guy not know how a cross-examine works? Like, just ask the question and then follow up with the next question. What are you doing? What is this?
Preaching?
I don't know. It's like he wants to make points when instead he could be really opening him up some damage in asking the right questions. Like, okay, what, are the laws of logic physical or are they something different? And I would say that the laws of logic are a framework, a model of how the physical world exists. So the laws of logic are what we call the laws of logic do represent a physicality, but the laws themselves, like the law of gravity, is a model, an explanation of it, rather than something physical. That's why I would refer to them as transcendentals, because they're kind of abstractions that we apply to the physical world in order to explain them.
Or materialist worldview give us invariant laws of thought?
There's a difference between a prescriptive law and a descriptive law. And I think you might be bordering on equivocation by talking about laws of thought as if they were prescriptive laws. We know that the speed limit, for example, is a prescriptive law. Don't drive this fast or there will be some consequence, right? But the laws of nature are not prescriptive. Anybody in Philosophy 101 knows this, that the laws of nature are descriptive. They're not telling you what you must do. So the laws of thought are not laws like a
so conceptual.
Law. Yeah, the laws of thought, if we can use that word law in a descriptive way, are labels to define how a functioning brain is coming to some type of, to make a decision, to some kind of a conclusion.
So laws of thought do not transcend the brain?
They don't transcend a functioning brain. I mean, you can write it down on paper, but still the brain has to read it. Right?
There are no prescriptive laws of rationality.
Yeah, I see. This is where I would say, yeah, they do transcend. They, just like the law of gravity does transcend the brain. Like, whether or not you think about it, gravity will still operate. And it will operate within the laws of gravity, right? The laws of nature. You don't have to, it's not just confined to your brain, but what is in your brain is a model of it that describes how it works, and that's what we call the laws. But it can get confusing for a theist because they're like, well, is it outside or inside your brain? Well, it's transcendental because we can, like, the gravity doesn't, like, the thought is physical. Right, it absolutely is a physical, but it's an abstraction. It's not like it exists in there. It is simply a model to describe how the world works. And it may be inaccurate, like Newton's laws were inaccurate. Relativity is much more accurate. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's not as accurate as some other model. And this is where the sort of black and white nature of theists really trip them up. They're like, well, it's either wrong or it's right. And we don't think in the terms of models in that way. We think of them in terms of how well does that abstraction represent the actuality of reality, like the actual nature of the world around us. Right? So some models might be inaccurate, but very, very useful. Like when we do maths on a circle, there is no circle that maths is 100% accurate for, because a perfect circle does not exist in reality. It is always imperfect, but the maths works for it.
Right. And additionally, because, pi, we can't nail it down because it just keeps going. And in a similar way, it's a concept that describes a real relationship between diameter and
circumference,
that the relationship is real. We have mathematical proofs of it, but we can't nail down the damn number because it just goes on forever. But the more precise you get it, the more accurate the results you produce. But it'll never be 100% accurate.
Correct. But yeah, we assume it goes on forever. We don't know for sure.
Well,
because how do you know? You have to get to an end, and just because we haven't get to an end doesn't mean an end doesn't exist. But
isn't there a way to determine if a number really does go on forever?
I think it does, but I think it's repeating. I think it's repetition, and pi doesn't repeat. Pi is one of those weird numbers that usually when you do have a number like 1/3 is 33.333, right? It's repetition of that pattern. But I think pi is one that the pattern doesn't actually repeat. Like it never repeats.
Apparently, mathematicians can use certain kinds of proofs. There's no quick answer Google's giving me on this one, but
okay.
In theory, there's a way
I could
to
be
do
wrong.
it.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
That would be transcultural, that are invariant, that transcend the chemical event of my brain.
Well, the concept of logic, of course. Logic is not a thing. Logic is what happens when you are putting together perceptions and thoughts and you're comparing A to A, is A not A, or is there an excluded middle, things like that, which are not laws. There's not like something that we have to look out in the universe for.
But Dan, based on what you said, those are epiphenomena. They are byproducts of
they're
material.
Not even epiphenomena. They're not even things.
They're not anything then.
They're not things, they're functions.
They're simply functions. So it's a physical, a law of thought is just a physical function.
Yeah, it's one of the ways. It's just like, I wasn't comparing digestion to consciousness, by the way. I was just saying that one organ has a function, another one does. Obviously, the brain is much more complex. But we wouldn't say that digestion is a thing, would we? It's the way the organ is functioning. We wouldn't call it some entity. Is there a law of universal digestion? Yeah, I mean, that's equivocating. That's comparing apples and oranges.
It's not equivocating to talk about laws of thought. This is what philosophers have discussed for centuries.
Yeah, but I fail to see how it it's connected to an afterlife. Like that's what we've got to remember. We're talking about an afterlife, and you're basically pointing out that there is some kind of absolute law in the universe that because we say that the law of logic is an abstraction, a description of the properties of reality, that for some reason you can't accept that, but you will accept that the theory of gravity is an abstraction to describe the property of gravity, the phenomenon of gravity. So I don't understand why a theist can accept one and not the other, except that it's inconvenient for them because they want to say, well, these laws are transcendent, they must have something creating it. I don't understand that.
But not
are there laws of rationality, entities, if you will? I mean, many of the Pythagoreans, some of the mathematicians, believed in an eternal place where numbers existed. Exactly. To say they're not prescriptive is to say that there's no way that I'm required to think. If they're just descriptive, well, I could describe another culture may have a different approach to logic,
They do. There's other forms of logic. There's Eastern logic that was fleshed out by people in India that is not the same as the Western logic, and it still works. I mean, I don't think it's particularly accurate with things, but it's still, doesn't he understand that there's also process logic that works differently as well? There's quantum logic, which works differently as well. My guy, there is different systems. It didn't just stop at Aristotle and go, oh, well, we found logic, that's it, we've got it nailed. No, that's not how anybody thinks. And this obsession with the laws of logic, it's not like the laws are out there floating around inscribed on tablets that have existed forever. It is just a description of how reality works. And there are, in my opinion, better ways of saying, what is logical. Because when you say the law of identity, oh, that's a ship. It might not always be a ship. At what point does, in the middle of sinking, does that ship become not a ship?
Yeah, and when it no longer meets the criteria, but which criterion, which ones take priority? Yeah, Aristotle is an interesting case because while he laid down some of the formal rules of logic, what he was doing was building on the work of Pythagoras and Archimedes and others who had been working in mathematics and toying with philosophy on the side. So what he was doing is translating mathematical concepts and principles for which there were proofs, definite real things. And he was like, what can we take from this and try to nail down some things in thought? And so it was a translation of mathematical concepts, not even the math itself, but the concepts into language. And it wasn't perfect.
No.
It's a noble effort, but not everything translates. And even the things that do are still a translation.
Right. But I think there is a lot of merit there, like the law of non-contradiction. You know, something can't be something and not something at the same time. You know, I think that it is definitely a way that the reality of the universe does work, right? Like something is either that thing and has the properties of that thing, or it doesn't. And that's fine, right? Like I don't see a problem with it. But that doesn't mean that the law itself, as we describe it, is out there floating around in the universe somewhere any more than the law of gravity is out there floating around in the universe. I think that's just the way reality works, and the laws of logic are our description of it. I think that logic itself does exist in the real world, like the non-contradictory nature of things and things like that. But, you know, that the laws as they're put out by us are simply descriptions, as is everything, you know? It's kind of like he's saying, oh, well, we called this thing a dog, but show me the dog thing in your head, right? It's kind of like, well, no, that's nonsensical. That's just the word we use and the description we use. That's just the label that we use. It's not actually in my head, my guy. That's just a label for it. And like I said, law of gravity works the same way. Like, it's just an abstraction that we apply to a phenomenon. That's it. And you can understand that, but you can't understand that the law of identity is an abstraction that we apply to the way things work in reality. For some reason, your just mind boggles at that. I don't know why.
Approach to rationality. A different time or age may have a different approach. So they're not then invariant. And there's no basis then for rationality that transcends the mind. How are these people here tonight, I'm asking, if thoughts are not causes of other thoughts, that is, a thought being immaterial is not a co-cause or a cause of another thought, what is the basis upon which tonight, here, we are supposed to evaluate the rational validity of these two arguments? If it's just brain and brain function, and our brains are all functioning differently, how are we supposed to judge? Who's right between you and I? How's the audience supposed to judge the two?
Before we get to it, do you have a question you want to address to...
Well, I do have one question, I guess, but can I answer this and then I'll ask him the one question? Are we out of time?
Well, we're running short, so...
Is it supposed to be a back and forth, like a switch cross-examination? Like he's supposed to ask one question, then Barker's supposed to ask one question, then Barker. You know, I think that's what it's supposed to be, and Boot's just taking up all the time pontificating against things which have absolutely no relation to the afterlife. None. Like, seriously,
yeah, I wasn't clear, partly because it's hard to hear the moderator. Often when we see cross-examines, it'll be like you get 5 minutes where you control the mic and you get 5 minutes where you control the mic. Maybe it's supposed to be one, then one, then one. Actually, you could get some very interesting places that way if everybody does a follow-up question on the previous question.
Yeah, but I think I like the idea of people having questions with follow-ups kind of thing, because rarely you will get asked one question and then have all the information that you want to receive. You want to follow that up with something. It might get a bit confusing if you're trying to track two subjects back and forth, or I could see it being confusing. I think it'd be a lot better to have, 5 minutes one person, 5 minutes for the other, or something like that, where they get to.
I think it'd be
a
lot easier to drive at a specific point. Like if you want to get one thing out of your interlocutor, and so you like ask question A and they respond to A or B, and so you move on to the next question depending on what and you just kind of steer them to try to make your case with what they're saying.
Yep.
You can give a quick answer then.
Oh, I thought we were still in my cross exam now. I haven't really given Dan much chance.
We've got 10 minutes.
Okay, I was enjoying it.
The fact that A is not non-A is not a thing, right? It's an assumption that our brains make based on our experience. Maybe you can imagine.
Your brain makes.
Maybe you can imagine.
Why is he interrupting? Why are you interrupting? Like, seriously, he said one sentence. Like, the thing is, it's a cross-examination for Boot here, and he has talked more than Barker. That's really unusual. That's incredibly unusual, right? It should be the person asking the question talking the least, because they're asking the question. This is wild. Yeah. Actually, Geronimus brings up we're still going. Did you want to call it at any point and do a third section, maybe?
Sure. I have no idea what comes after the cross, but...
No idea.
Yeah, we can finish it up over at my place, and then it'll put it back on.
I was enjoying that. I didn't realize the time. I was enjoying that, mostly because Joe Boot is terrible. Like, absolutely. Like, if this is one of the best theist debaters of all time, I have serious concerns, because holy crap. Like, the amount of straw manning of Barker's position was incredible.
Top 100 according to some. I mean, some people consider Jade Dyer to be top 10, you know?
Yeah, that's...
opinions vary.
Yeah, I'll just put the time.
Geronimus? You should check out some of our old debates in the playlist. There were some where we went 6 hours. Just to finish one off.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't remember that.
Maybe
you got me
only
there.
5. It's been a while.
Maybe. All right, I'll get rid of this. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. I really am. But it's just wild, like how disingenuous, and this kind of interrupting and stuff, it doesn't happen by accident. This is a debate bro tactic that they've learnt to not let somebody expound on their ideas. I would absolutely pay that, hey, if Dan Barker's going on for a long time, interruptions happen. I get you, totally. But he's complaining that he's, like, when you talk more than the other side and then you complain that they're filibustering or talking too much or something like that, it is really wild to see from sort of a neutral perspective. Like, seriously? You seriously? And during a cross exam where you ask the question and then the opponent gives their response, it's just ridiculous to see them interrupt in the first sentence. Like, seriously, they're supposed to be allowed to answer, and I think the moderator should be saying, hey, please let him answer at least a couple of sentences, my guy. Like, and the thing is that he's not actually setting up his arguments. All he's doing is reacting to Dan Barker's arguments, and that's an important distinction. So he's hearing something and going, oh, well, I want to jump on that. But what he's not doing is setting up where he is going. He is being entirely reactionary. I think, if it was me, I would be sort of, how do you work out the differences? Then depending on how he answered, if he just said, hey, I have this thing, you can wait for him to expound on that and sort of say, hey, it only exists in the mind. And then say, well, isn't there a problem if everybody disagrees on what the actual meaning is, or what meaning we should be going for? Isn't it a problem to have that many contradictory ideas, none of which can be shown to be the true idea? And I mean, my answer would be, welcome to society.
Yeah.
Like, people have different ideas at where society should be going. That is just the reality of the situation. We all can see that. It was interesting. I saw a speech by Obama recently. He came back out, made this. It was a fantastic speech, and man, I miss that guy. Because he said, being president of a country of, 100 million people, you've got to know that people were going to have disagreements on where they should be going. And how you maneuver through that is really your job as a and taking a sane, sensible approach to governance is a breath of fresh air at the moment. It really is. So this whole thing about, well, what if people do disagree? Even in Christianity, people disagree. Like, so what do you do? Well, what we do is we look at, what is the best for everybody, what will give everybody a voice and an ability to say what their meaning is and follow that meaning within reason, as long as it doesn't harm other people. What do the theists do? They just claim their God is the right one, that they were told the right message, and then basically, ostracize and treat other people horribly based upon their conviction that they are right.
Yeah, just plug your ears and go la la la, and you'll be correct.
Yeah, just say, oh, I know you say you have meaning, but I have the right meaning. And meanwhile, every single Christian's doing that, even while they totally disagree. It doesn't solve the problem. Neither does ours, but at least our solution will get you to a point where you have a functioning society that can at least have a intersubjective, an agreement on what the hell we're doing here. That's my opinion, anyway. But yeah, I'm Boot's terrible. That's terrible. Barker's good as usual, but I think he should be really pushing back against the interruptions and the aggressiveness that Joe Boot is using at the moment, because he is being very aggressive for a moderated debate. I don't know why the moderator's not stepping in, but yeah, not cool. It's a formal debate. You should have some charity as far as people answers are going. I don't know why he isn't.
Trying not to piss off the guests. I don't know. I run into that so often. It's like people hosting multi-guest stage shows, like not even debates, just like people who it's supposed to be a conversation between, a voice actor and an animator or whatever. Yeah. And there's supposed to be a person there who's like asking questions to one then the other to like drive the conversation, but they're mostly supposed to just be invisible and let those two talk to each other. They only step in when the conversation needs a redirection or a little boost, like some new inspiration for things to talk about. Yeah. But they're afraid of pissing off the celebrities. Yep. So if one starts to dominate the conversation, they're afraid to step in and redirect like a new question to the other one, And
I understand that because, especially with small channels who rely on their guests, they really do rely. And when a big guest comes along, they're like, well, if I stand up to them, they're not going to come back on my show, and then I miss out on all the clicks and the things that make it work. I think that if you are truly being a neutral moderator, you should stand by your decisions. I think that was originally what made modern day debate great, that, the moderator would stand up to a Darth Dawkins or something and say, no, you have to abide by the rules of the debate. But it seems like they just threw that out somewhere along the way, and that's a real shame, that they just went, well, there's some people who can come on and do anything that they want. I mean, I'll even sort of point that out on my side as well. I think that Craig from Fight the Flat Earth, he got away with way too much of that kind of stuff because he was a large channel, and I don't think that's right. I think you should, in any debate, the guy with 5 followers and a dog should have the same level of moderation as the person with 1 million followers. It should not matter as far as moderation goes. But I can understand why people would go, oh, don't want to piss them off. They've got 1 million followers and they might not come back. I think that if up front you are like, well, I'm neutral, and my decision will be my decision, I think that people will respect that, or at least I hope they would. Will that happen? I don't know. It just is, well, you've got to stand by your decisions no matter what. It's like the referee calling a foul on the, on Pele or something, or, the greatest soccer player, on Beckham or something. He knows he's going to be unpopular, and he knows, the people above him might say, hey, you've got to stand by your calls, right? You're an umpire. You've got to stand by those calls and be neutral as possible, even if the call is wrong.
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be unhappy no matter what. But if you don't make the call, you're not going to get hired as a referee in the future. People will be like, you don't make calls when people break the rules. But if you do make the call, then the owners will be mad. You'll never play in this stadium again.
Well, I've often said, and here's something that I've said before. You know that you're being a neutral moderator when both sides are claiming it was unfair.
Yeah.
Like when both sides are saying that was totally unfair, you were on their side, that's when you know you've been a neutral moderator. But anyway. Well, that was fun. Yeah, well, so next week we're back on Ember's channel. Fantastic channel. Go check it out if you haven't, which I can't imagine anybody hasn't because, hey, it's Ember. It's better than Ember. But,
Indeed.
We will be back there next week. What do you have coming up, Ems? What you up to?
Oh, assorted mischief. Tomorrow, Maya is on. Well, not exactly on break, but there's no Bad Science Sunday tomorrow. So we're doing a pseudoscience Sunday instead. I've got Chad Harris, the infamous Arch Radish, coming by, and we're going to talk about some deadly goo. It'll be interesting. So I hope you join us.
Fun. Look, honestly, Maya probably deserves a break. She is every week she's there with the most insane stuff and weasels. You need a break occasionally. I totally get it.
Yeah. Assorted shows over the course of the week. Friday, I'll be over on my Comic Con's channel, at least as things stand right now. Doing an interview with a USMC angry veteran about Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So that's NocoCon. The links are all on my website, betterthanember.com. But assorted stuff through the week, and of course Saturday will be Saturday we'll be back over at my place to close out this debate. So
hopefully,
keep an eye out and join me for shenanigans. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels and have the notifications turned on, because sometimes when I do a surprise live, it is a surprise live.
It's you even surprise yourself, which is strange, but hey, I totally get it. I'm going to be back on my Wednesday or Tuesday night with Is God the Arsehole, and Thursday night Eastern Time with Fundamentalist Fails. Someone did give me a suggestion last one. It was a really good suggestion. I really did enjoy it. So if you do have suggestions, drop them in the chat. If you do have disagreements on how the debate went or anything like that, drop it in the chat. Always happy to hear from you. One of those things is we can disagree and still respect one another, be friends, or do whatever. That's fine. There's some deal breakers for me, but simply having a different opinion is not it. It's not there. But yeah, apart from that, do be kind to yourself. Do take a break if you need a break. I think that in today's lifestyle, there is this onus on working yourself to devastation, and you can't work if you are absolutely destroyed from it. I had to learn about burnout the hard way, and it is not worth it. So be generous to yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you do need a break, you'll work so much better with one. So Maya, I expect the content to be twice as good when I go back there. Just saying. I'm sure it will be. But be kind to others. Be charitable in a debate. Listen to what they're saying. Don't just take what you want from it. At least try. I know that's tough sometimes. At least try. Do take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
what new horizons can we look now? Where are tomorrow's opportunities? The frontiers of the future are not on any map. But now, what's ahead of us?